Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You're listening to Geekcast Radio on geekcastradio.com.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of Geekcast Radio, as today we begin another of our epic adventures as we once again attempt to assemble one of our top 100 lists. In the past, you've seen us tackle the top 100 animated series of all time, as well as the top 100 animated films, and today we begin the third list in that series as we turn our attention to the top 100 animated characters of all time. I am your host for this countdown, OptimusSolo, and joining me today for this first segment of reveals are my fellow cinema geeks, MovieRevolt Dan. Welcome, sir.
How's it going?
Not too bad. Excited to see how this all works out here. We also have HardCandiMandi. Hello.
Yola.
Yola from her. FridleyCent's here as well.
Hey.
Also, as we go through these episodes, we like to bring along a special guest or two joining us along the way. And today we have from the Toonami Faithful podcast, Sketch. How's it going, sir?
Great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. And we'll have a variety of guests kind of joining us as we work our way through. So it's good to hear from different voices and different takes on all this stuff. Before we get going, Dan, I wanted to quick ask you a question. Are you excited? Last time we did a top 100, we did the top 100 live action television series, and you knew all the answers. Are you excited to be back on the side of the mystery?
I'm excited to do all the work. That was putting all the math and all that stuff. That's I was happy to let you do that this time. But yeah, I am, because this one is it was hard enough to put my own list together, so I have no idea of what we're gonna. Especially today's episode, where you get the latter half of it, the bottom 25. It's going to be interesting. So
it seems like when we've done these lists in the past, that first section, the first 25, is kind of a wild card for sure. We get to definitely see a lot of variety usually when we've done these. We'll have to see how it plays out today. To give you guys a little bit of the groundwork and the rules as far as how we assembled this list. As we've done in the past, we've invited a lot of people to submit lists and kind of help us form our 100 entries. And that was no different this time. We did invite a bunch of people, a lot of Geekcast Radio names that you will recognize probably if you've been a fan of the network over the years. So we have obviously those of us that are here on the record. Also from Geekcast Radio, the founder, Steve Megatron Phillips, provided a list. Doug Abel from Talking About My Generation provided a list. We had Dan, your sister who does the board game reviews for us, Kristen, provided a list. We had Tara Blair, Rising Star from original Geekcast Radio time back in Tooncast days, provided a list. We also had a combination list submitted, Dan, from your friends there at Talking in Circles. So they combined their powers to give us a list. And then from outside the network, we had a list submitted from BehindTheVoiceActors.com from Rai Sankari. We had the Simplistic Reviews guys combined and submitted a list. We had JD and Brendan from In Session Film submit a list. Also, frequent Geekcast Radio host, co-host, and guest TV's Mr. Neil provided a list, as well as the got to be the record commenter on our Facebook post, Mr. David Barufi, provided a list as well. I think I hit everybody there. So those were the guys and gals that helped form this list. And the rules that we gave them were simply to come up with their top 50 or their top 100 animated characters. And the only criteria we told them basically was we had eliminated Marvel and DC from this countdown. So if you were looking forward when you heard the topic to hear a lot about Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, etc., I apologize and I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we will not be hearing those names because we wanted to save that for a list all of its own. We figured it was a rich enough category that it could provide enough characters for its own top 100 sometime down the line. So Dan, that was a decision that we made also because in past lists it seems like the DC Marvel universe has dominated at times.
Yeah, it was a tough decision when we went all back and forth with, but ultimately we felt like, one, it's challenging for a number of reasons. Are you getting votes because of what the character was on the show? Or are you getting votes because of its notoriety just in general? Which version are people going to be voting for? like, do you say Batman, the animated TV character from, the Batman, or so it was complicated, and like Kevin mentioned, we felt like next year we'll probably, or sometime, be able to dedicate a list solely to those characters. So in order to not basically talk about the same characters over and over again and get more variety, felt that it was only fair. So
right. And it was the loose rule was kind of that we didn't want anything that was based or came to popularity mainly from the comic books. Now, there are probably exceptions because in a way, shape, or form, there's a lot of characters that actually originated in a comic, even if it was only weeks or months before a TV show or before a film or stuff like that. So there are going to be some exceptions and some gray areas along the way. We also eliminated all Star Wars characters, mainly for the fact that a majority of them were probably more so made famous through the live action films. Granted, there's been some great Star Wars animated cartoons along the way that could have provided some characters, but again, possibility for maybe something down the line, the top 50 countdown or something of that nature. And then we also had to deal with certain characters that a lot of people kind of put together in their mind, pairs or duos in the cartoon history. So we had to deal with which characters would count as a duo and which characters were standing alone. And I'm sure some people will have problems with a decision we made here or there along the way. So hopefully we fell on the side that angers the least amount of people, but there's no way we're going to make everybody happy. So there will be some duos that show up, and you guys will have to wait to see how that works out. I think outside of that, I don't remember any other rules. There was no rules as far as time period. There was no disqualifying anything as far as the form it goes, as far as Western animation or anime or things like that. So that was all fair game. Matt, let's start with you though. What kind of criteria did you use? What was your thought process as you tried to assemble your list?
So I don't know quite what happened to me as a young child, but somewhere around the age of 12, I stopped caring about like classic American animation. Like I was tired of the Looney Tunes. I was bored of Tom and Jerry. Like those things don't get me excited anymore. And so like all my stuff is almost all made within my lifetime, which is a very short section of animation, and almost exclusively like Cartoon Network or Hanna-Barbera. I tried to avoid anime because I figured it'd become a little too complicated. I watch a lot of anime, and like I tried to avoid like being like, well, Mickey Mouse has been around for 100 years, so Mickey Mouse needs to be on my list. What if I don't like Mickey? So, like I didn't put like a Mickey Mouse. I didn't put a Bugs Bunny on my list. So my list is probably the weirdest and the least loved list.
Whoa!
You're already
no
the
Bugs
haters.
Bunny.
Did not put him on there.
You're inviting the haters.
Pick up.
I gave it Scooby-Doo. You got Scooby-Doo list.
We'll have to see what else shows up on Matt's list. Dan, how did you try to break this down? Because there are so many cartoon characters over decades and decades. There's a pool to choose from. So how did you help narrow it down for yourself?
Yeah, actually, I was talking to Dave Brathy, who he mentioned brought a list to us too, and he mentioned this was really hard to put together compared to like last year with the TV shows or previous ones. And this is by far the hardest one I think we've done because of just the huge variety. You could easily do a top 100 Simpsons characters. You could get South Park characters, but like there's so many, and so it's so hard just to pick and choose which ones you want on it. So one thing I did to try to help my own sanity was like, okay, who do I really want from South Park? I'm going to put that on there because I'm not going to put 10 South Park characters. I'm going to try to limit different properties. I try to look at it that way. I did consider overall just iconography or overall impact on the genre along with just the quality of the character. So I did try to get a balance there as much as I could because there are big characters that people know and are huge icons in the world of animation. But as a character, they're kind of very one-dimensional. So how does that mean get really high? And I try to strike a balance. Basically, I kind of created two categories, and within like overall quality of the character and overall impact on the genre of animation, and use that to kind of balance my list. So again, a lot of math unnecessarily. Probably took this a lot more serious than I needed to. And, that's how I kind of broke it down. But
you cannot take this too seriously, Dan. Amanda, your first venture into this project was last time when we did the television shows itself. What was it like this time? Did you change your strategy, or how did you go about narrowing down, and what made one character stand out more to you than another?
I think last time I worked my way from the bottom up because it was so difficult for me to choose what was my number one. So I was able to work my way from the bottom up. This time I did the complete opposite, and like I know which one I'm going for at the top. So I was able to work my way down. And it's always difficult to who's 65, who's 80, that weird area. So that's always a challenge. But I think that I went the most into, I don't know, nostalgia that I ever have, and like what did I get out of these characters? What did my child self get out of this, and did it stick with me, into adulthood? Is this something that I really hold on to even now? So I think that it was more about impact on me as a child.
Okay, absolutely. And Sketch, how about you? What was your thought process as you tried to assemble your list that you submitted?
Oh boy, I had so many things going. I agree. It was easier to look at like the top 10 and figure that out, and then just kind of work your way down. But I figured I would be one of the only people to have more of an international bend on this. So I tried to include some Japanese characters that are really iconic, like people know about them around the world. Mm-hmm. And admittedly, what I know knowledge-wise of how iconic they are outside of Japan and America is limited, but I tried to go with characters that I knew had a lot of impact around the world. And also tried to throw in some European characters that I knew of and stuff like that.
I think we always talk about how sometimes our lists over at Geekcast Radio are somewhat obviously Western animation slanted towards, and we sometimes don't give anime the credit that it deserves. Well, not just sometimes, all the time we don't give it the credit it deserves. But you bring up European animation. I think that even gets less credit.
Oh, absolutely.
There was a lot of the animated films that were, more from European countries that we just did not give the love to that I thought they deserved.
I wish I knew more about animation outside of the US and Japan, but there's just not a lot of information, which is unfortunate. But beyond that, when I was looking at American cartoons, I was thinking about the ones that had a lasting impact, the ones that were truly iconic, very long-term popular. Like, I would maybe throw in a character that I really, really loved and thought was a fantastic character, but I put them towards the bottom of the list thinking, the archetype characters that existed before this character are more important and therefore should be ranked better.
Right.
But I didn't want to leave them out. So narrowing that down got really, really hard. Like thinking about, which iconic Disney villains do I want to include? Because there's so many. And then thinking about which classic cartoon characters really stood out among, like, there's the obvious ones, but then there's the less obvious ones. And I had to debate with myself, is this a character that really matters? Or is it just an old character that a lot of people know about?
Right.
Yeah, it got really hard. And then when it came to franchises, I definitely tried to narrow it down to one or two characters maximum, because there's just so many characters in some of these franchises. Like, it killed me, but I was only going to vote for one Ninja Turtle. It killed me. I love all four of them almost equally, but I had to just pick one. And along those lines, there were also characters that I do not personally like at all, but if I felt like they were well-known, popular enough, had enough impact, I was going to put them on the list. Not putting Johnny Test on my list. I don't care how long that show lasted. That was for you, Mike.
I had something similar to especially what you were talking about and what Dan was talking about. I definitely tried to narrow down like specific shows or franchises to a very select few and try to help narrow my scope. So if I was looking at a certain show, if I could get it down to one or two, that helped me eliminate a lot of things. And then also like what you're talking about with certain archetypes, whether you're talking about like a Disney princess or a Disney villain or, a Hanna-Barbera character that was similar to other Hanna-Barbera characters, which ones kind of stood above the rest of them. So that was definitely one thing I used as well. Overall, obviously we had 15 lists submitted, and I forgot to mention it up front, but nobody here knows the results except for myself, so it will be kind of genuine reactions as we reveal each one. Overall, the total number of characters that got a vote, we had over 460 characters that got at least one vote. So that just kind of tells you the size of, or the pool of characters that are available out there, and that's just scratching the surface, but 460 plus characters getting a vote. Dan, I had a couple more questions before we get into the actual countdown. One thing that I'm going to kind of keep track, because I try to get as much information ready for you guys as possible, but one thing that I thought it might be interesting is to see a couple different things here. Number one, which companies are most well represented as we make our way through the countdown. Dan, any heavy hitters that you're looking at that might have a shot at dominating the countdown, or do you think it's going to be evenly spread amongst a plethora of different companies?
Trying to think back to when we did the animation movie countdown and TV countdown. I have a feeling Disney is going to have a pretty strong hold of the countdown, just thinking about the films that were highly rated on those and knowing that we are dealing with a lot of the same people. So that would be my initial guess, but I could be wrong. Probably not, though.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to look and see which ones start showing up more than others. It'll be interesting to kind of track that as we go. Another thing that I'll be keeping track of as we make our way through this is the origin of the characters. And what I mean by that is both, number one, the year that the character originated, or the decade that they originated, as well as what form they originated in. Was it a book? Was it a film? Was it a theatrical short? Was it a comic strip? What kind of thing, where did these characters originate? So we're going to have to look at that as well. Matt, how about looking at it from another angle? If you had to guess the ratio or the percentage out of the 100 characters that are going to be revealed, what do you think the male-female split would be?
I'm going to guess it's going to be overwhelmingly male. Probably something like a 70% area. I did my list with my wife verbally, while I was driving, she was going through the things, and overwhelmingly I was like, why am I only picking male characters? And I think that there was a underrepresentation of female characters, especially if you go back a long time. Or you'll have your female characters who are just like annoying bitchy characters. Like a Miss Piggy is not going to be as popular as a Kermit, you say.
Right. Yeah, so we'll have to see if that holds true. If your suspicions are correct, if we have a male-dominated list, or if the females surprise you. Amanda, one question for you here. Another way to look at it is good versus evil, because a lot of characters either come across or are depicted as the protagonist or the antagonist. How do you think the split's going to be like that? Are we going to have a list dominated just by good characters, or is there some evil love out there?
I would say it would be predominantly good guys, because everybody likes to feel good. I would hope that there would be some definite shows of evil power in this, because I think everybody can like a villain sometimes.
All right. Last question, Sketch, before we get going here. Looking at what I said before as far as the origins go, do you have any suspicions as far as which decades will be best represented? And we're talking about when the character originated. What time period do you think supplied us with the most iconic characters that are going to show up in this list?
Oh, I have a strong feeling. I mean, it could go two ways. I think it's a strong possibility it'll be a lot of 60s and 90s, but I think it's going to be mostly 80s and 90s.
All right, so we'll have to wait and see if that holds true. I know that definitely played a part when we were talking about our animated series list and our animated films based on probably the age of most people that were submitting lists. We'll have to see if that holds true, or if some classic characters can make a push as to dominate the countdown. So, all right, without further ado, let's get to the reveals, and let's start off with our number 100 selection.
100.
For number 100, we go to, well, maybe Sketch had the point there. We're going to 1980s, specifically 1985. The character originated for TV, and we're starting with a female. Good character from Filmation. We're starting off in number 100 with She-Ra. So She-Ra starts off the countdown, voiced by Melanie Britt. Obviously originated in 1985, had 3 or 4 different incarnations over the years. Dan, what do you think of starting off with She-Ra?
I have very little thought on this, to be honest with you. I never watched the cartoon. He-Man she wasn't in He-Man. Am I wrong? Am I
He-Man and She-Ra are brother and sister.
Okay, well there you go. Yeah, so I for whatever reason I skipped over much of that regarding my time in the 80s. But I mean, happy that we're getting some female representation already. That's pretty cool. And though I'm not surprised we're starting in the 80s, I don't know if this is a sign of things to come. But I'm a little surprised you made the list, but made that maybe more my ignorance showing than anything.
Well, and another thing, like you said, the wild card that is this bottom, or this first section of 25. Sometimes it does not take much to get on the list in this section of the countdown. If you had at least one person ranking it super high, and we did have one person on the panel, not on the recording panel, but on the group that submitted list that had this all the way up at number 13 on their top 100. So that played a big deal in getting She-Ra onto the list. Matt, I believe She-Ra was on your list as well. So why do you think she is deserving to show up here in the top 100?
I love She-Ra. Like, I love like not just the character of the show, because it was like, hey, we're gonna make a female He-Man, like a show aimed at a female audience that's just He-Man, and I don't know. I love the whole show. Like they got like the Archer guy who's not wearing anything but like wrestling tights and like a shoulder strap. I love She-Ra. I put her right next to He-Man on my list, real high.
Yeah, and I think those people that are fans of that universe, definitely She-Ra would place fairly high, and definitely a strong female character from the 80s as far as the action goes, which we didn't get a lot of. So, Amanda, what are your thoughts on She-Ra showing up?
I don't have like memories of She-Ra. I am too young, but I'm a little surprised that she's so low. Honestly, I would have thought that she would be higher based on her popularity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if she's as popular nowadays, and if people, younger generations would know much about her. It might be just a specific generation that really has the memories of She-Ra. I don't know. Sketch, do you think she's deserving or not quite?
I think she's deserving. As far as like strong female characters in the 80s go, excellent choice in She-Ra. I seem to recall a lot of people actually liking the She-Ra series more than He-Man, but despite that, He-Man's had many more incarnations over the years. Like the 2002 He-Man show was awesome.
Yeah.
So you didn't really have She-Ra in that. So bummer there. And I feel like She-Ra's kind of been lost to time a little bit, but I'm not too surprised to see her pop up on this list because, like I said, y'all love 80s cartoons.
Right. Yeah, I agree. She does seem like she's got a little bit lost there throughout time. I think the reason that some people do enjoy the She-Ra cartoons better than the He-Man cartoons is because there's a lot of crossovers in the She-Ra series. So you do get He-Man appearing a lot. So you kind of get the dynamic of both worlds in that She-Ra series. Whereas the He-Man series, you're kind of stuck in that one world with the same set of characters for quite an extended time. So
an expanded universe.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So that's where we start today. Number 100, She-Ra.
99.
Actually, though, she was in a tie for that 100th spot, and that brings up a couple different things. The first of which is how we break ties here on the countdown. And the first tiebreaker rule that I put forth here is if there was a tie based on the points, that the first tiebreaker would be who appeared on more lists. So if one of the characters appeared on more lists, then they got the bump. If both characters appeared on the same number of lists, then it was which character was ranked the highest out of all the lists that they did appear on. So She-Ra lost out in this tiebreaker to our number 99, which is also going to probably open up a can of worms on whether these characters should qualify or not. It was hard for me to eliminate them because some of them did appear in an animated form, but it's also hard for me to eliminate them because I don't know if there was ever going to be an opportunity for us to do a top 100 list, even though there was definitely plenty of characters to choose from. And our number 99 is going into the world of Muppets. And that would be from, I guess, an iconic character, especially for the younger generations, and that would be Elmo. Originated in one shape in 1972, but was not named Elmo until 1985. Now, Dan, was this something we should have outlined before the lists were submitted? And do you think Muppets should count for this, even though not all of them necessarily were animated?
I didn't include Muppets in mine just because I feel like they're two different things for the most part. And yeah, there were some, like, obviously you have like Muppet Babies or something like that that you could argue, but I guess I consider them separate. So I get the idea, like the thought process of, okay, we're not going to do a top 100 Muppets, so maybe we could one day, I guess. But so for me, just because I didn't really consider them together, I excluded them when I was putting my list together.
Elmo has appeared in 18 different shows or cartoons, games, movies, etc. Amanda, do you have any problems with Muppets being included in here, or was that just a flub by us in the rulemaking process to not eliminate them off the bat?
I think it depends. I know that myself, I had a Muppet, but my placement came because one of my favorite books as a child was about this character, and so I saw him in a different light on pages. I don't know if he was ever in anything else like that was animated, but because he was, drawn in a book that was so close to my heart, I was able to place it. I don't think that Elmo should be disqualified because he has been in animated situations. He's in a ton of video games too now for little kids, all kinds of stuff. So he is essentially an animated character, even if he isn't, his original self.
Sketch, maybe you can speak to this the most because you had this higher than anybody else on your list.
I did. And the thing about Muppets, I didn't put too many Muppets on my list. I think I put 3 total, and 2 of them were for some Sesame Street. And I wasn't. It took me a while to decide. Okay, is it Big Bird or is it Elmo? Is it Big Bird or is it Elmo? I think I was coming down the top 10 on that one. Initially, I didn't want to include any Muppets because I thought that they didn't belong on this list. But at the same time, I saw that they were in consideration, and I thought, okay, so if we're going to include claymation and we're going to include other forms of animation, then Muppets are kind of an animation, and whatever. I mean, these are iconic characters, and so I decided to look at it. Just everybody knows Elmo. Come on. Elmo is arguably the star of Sesame Street at this point, and for many, many years. So I thought he was well deserving of being way up on the list. If he's not considered by disqualification, I'm okay with that. But if we're going to include Muppets, then Elmo should definitely be on the list.
That brings up a good question, Matt. If Elmo has snuck onto the list as a Muppet character, what's your expectation of how many other Muppet characters should we see? Is that the only one we should see? Should we see a dozen of them, or are there only a few more that might have a shot?
Oh man, until I saw it get posted, the 2 which one of these 2 puppets do you think is better on the countdown, pre-countdown? Yeah. I didn't even think about adding any puppet characters, and now it's like a puppet beat She-Ra. I don't even know what to think anymore.
What a world we live in!
She-Ra was in the last quarter of my list, and it's like I didn't even consider puppets, and now it's like Elmo. So probably Big Bird, maybe Cookie Monster. I'm gonna say easily 3 or 4, if not more.
All right. We'll have to wait and see how many more Muppets appear on the countdown and what kind of controversy that stirs up for the listeners. I would love
if Stantler and Waldorf were on this list. I didn't put them on my list because I didn't think they should be, but I would crack up if they made it.
It's definitely some iconic characters in the Muppet world for sure.
98.
All right, let's make our way to the next entry of the countdown. Coming in only 1 point ahead of Elmo and She-Ra, we're going to go to a more modern character here that has not had very many incarnations and has just recently been kind of introduced to us. We're going to 2015, a character that was introduced just last year in film, and that would be from the Pixar film Inside Out. We're going with Joy, voiced by Amy Poehler, our second female out of our 3 picks so far. Amanda, is it too soon to put Joy on a list like this, or do you think it's worthy?
I'm kind of torn because Joy was a really great character. You had to like her. You could really easily associate with her. I think that she was really good for kids.
Hello, did I wake you?
Do you have to play that?
Well, I have to practice, and I don't think of it as playing so much as hugging. Okay, first day of school. Very, very exciting. I was up late last night figuring out a new plan. Here it is. Fear. I need a list of all the possible negative outcomes on the first day at a new school.
Way ahead of you there. Does anyone know how to spell meteor?
Disgust. Make sure Riley stands out today, but also blends in.
When I'm through, Riley will look so good, the other kids will look at their own outfits and barf.
Joy. Yes, Joy? You'll be in charge of the console, keeping Riley happy all day long. And may I add, I love your dress. It's adorable. Oh, this old thing? Thank you so much. I love the way it twirls. Train of thought, right on schedule. Anger, unload the daydreams. I ordered extra in case things get slow in class.
Might come in handy if this new school is full of boring, useless classes, which it probably will be.
Oh, Sadness. I have a super important job just for you. Really? Mm-hmm. Follow me.
What are you doing?
And there. Perfect. This is the circle of sadness. Your job is to make sure that all the sadness stays inside of it.
So, you want me to just stand here?
Hey, it's not my place to tell you how to do your job. Just make sure that all the sadness stays in the circle.
See? You're a pro at this.
Isn't this fun?
No.
Atta girl. All right, everyone, fresh start. We are going to have a good day, which will turn into a good week, which will turn into a good year, which turns into a good life.
Not being a parent, I didn't see how kids were really directly affected by her, so I can't really, speak in depth on that. But I think that it might be a little too early to put them on here because we haven't even really had time to fully appreciate it. Maybe, I know that people really supported this film and sang praises for it. So I guess I could be wrong because of maybe it's quality and not quantity in years. So.
All right. Yeah, none of us on the record today had Joy listed on any of our lists. Dan, In Session Film had it in their top 10. Is it worthy of such a high position? Is number 98 okay, or should it not be on the countdown at all?
I think 98's a decent spot for Joy. Top 10 seems a excessive to me, but that's the way it is. I mean, I did enjoy Inside Out a lot. It was the kind of the return to form for Pixar. As a character, though, I like Joy, but I don't know, thinking of how we mentioned previously when I looked at, shows, even I looked at companies, too, like Pixar, and if I was going to name my favorite Pixar characters, I don't know if Joy would be in the top 5, top 10 of those. Yeah, because I like that movie, but I guess, in a way, it wasn't because of her character, if that makes sense. She was adorable. Amy Poehler was great, because she's Amy Poehler, and she's great at everything she does. But yeah, I mean, I think a 98's a decent spot for her. I have no issue including characters that are relatively new, similar to we had newer TV shows. I think that's fine. So I don't think that should impact her. But for me, she just wasn't as strong as some of the best characters Pixar has given us.
Matt and Sketch, jumping off of that, if Joy is showing up, does that mean we're in store for a plethora of Pixar characters, or do either of you think that there was other characters in Inside Out that were more worthy than Joy?
I don't feel like any one character in Inside Out stood out. If someone had just said all of the emotions from Inside Out, I'd be like, yeah, okay. And I feel honestly, I missed something that should have been in my top 50, just that cast. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I like them.
What about you, Sketch? Do you think there's going to be a lot more Pixar characters heading our way?
I think there's going to be a decent amount of Pixar characters because there's a lot of beloved Pixar characters. I did not expect anybody from that movie. It's a great movie. It's very enjoyable. I feel like if you did a list of the best groups of characters, a cast of characters, then I would see it maybe up there because they have great dynamic. But individually, Joy is a good character, but I don't think she really stands out that much. I think I might sooner give it to Sadness or Anger.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering.
By definition of that character, she's limited, obviously. So that's
exactly.
Well, we'll have to wait and see if more Inside Out characters are heading our way, or exactly how many Pixar films or Pixar characters we'll get, and if it will rival what Dan was guessing might be the front runner of Disney. Obviously, they're hand in hand, but if we make the clarification which one comes out on top.
97.
All right, moving on to number 97. I will say that this character shocked me completely that it is showing up on our countdown. Maybe you guys will not be as shocked as I am. We are going to another company. We've had 4 different companies so far: Filmation, Jim Henson's Muppets, we had Pixar, and now we're going into the world of the WB or Warner Brothers for a character that first appeared on television sets in 1993, our third female character, and that would be from, I believe, the Animaniacs was the show that she appeared in, and that is Slappy Squirrel.
Oh, yes.
Now, Slappy Squirrel made it on the countdown because it appeared in 3 different people's top 50. And it's showing up on our list at number 97 because a majority of us did not have it listed at all. Sketch, you had a reaction there. What do you think of Slappy Squirrel making it on the countdown? And if she made it...
Slappy Squirrel is a fantastic character. I didn't put her on my list because, there's lots of really great characters. I mean, I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, and I have a fondness for those 80s, 90s characters from that era. And Slappy the Squirrel on Animaniacs, like the whole cast of Animaniacs is wonderful. And Slappy the Squirrel is a great character because she is an interpretation of an old cartoon character who's like over it and she doesn't want to deal with things anymore. And she's hilarious. I love her.
Amanda, if you were listing your top 5 Animaniacs characters, would Slappy Squirrel even make that list?
You know, honestly, even though I've seen a ton of Animaniacs, I don't remember her, so probably not. I think some Animaniacs did show up on my list, but definitely not Slappy, so sad to say no.
Dan, we've had 4 picks, 3 females so far. What do you think?
Pretty surprising for She-Ra, not too surprising. Slappy Squirrel, I kind of shocked in a way. I mean, I know we have a lot of huge Animaniacs fans that put a list together, so maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I do think she's a great character. I didn't consider her, not because she was always one of my favorite parts of Animaniacs, but like mentioned previously, I kind of felt like there were more characters that are a bigger part of that show, but she had some of my favorite sketches, or I guess sketches if you want to call them sketches, like the one where they're at Woodstock. Like that's still one of the all-time favorite moments for me for that show. So yeah, she was always hilarious, and with her, I forget her little nephew or whatever that would come along, they were a great pairing. So
right.
It's a very pleasant surprise this year on this list.
Yeah, it's highly ranked as number 13 amongst one of the list submitters. Yeah, Cher Stoner, definitely a great voice work there for Slappy Squirrel, and maybe one that a lot of people didn't think of, but I guess as you think of her, and if you were to rewatch the show, maybe a character that would stand out even higher than you remember. All right, let's see where we go next.
96.
We're heading to number 96, also a tie, our second tie of the countdown so far. This individual character tied with Slappy Squirrel, but came out on top because it was on more lists. We're going to yet another company. We have not had a company repeated yet. We're also going back a little bit further in time than we have before. So we're going to go to the world of Hanna-Barbera in the year 1968 for this character that originated on one of the Hanna-Barbera TV shows, a male character, and our first, I guess, quote-unquote, bad character, the famously voiced by Paul Winchell character Dick Dastardly at number 96. Sketch, you had him at 46. He's showing up here at 96. Is it not high enough for Dick Dastardly?
No, I think that's good. I put him high on my list because I figured in the grand scheme of things he would end up towards the bottom, as he should. But he's a great character. Like Dastardly and Muttley are fantastic villains characters. Just that classic twirling mustache bad guy. That, I mean, he's not Boris and Natasha, but he's up there.
But we'll stop the rest of them when we blast the pads. You plant the dynamite, Muttley. And I'll give you the signal. What was that? Now! Now what went wrong?
He's really a great villain that you love. He's hilarious.
Matt, we talked about how we might not, you expected that maybe we'd have more good characters than evil characters or bad characters, quote unquote. If we're looking at just the world of villains, is Dick Dastardly up at the top of the villain cartoon characters?
No, I think I'm gonna have to agree with Sketch on this one. Like he's not the Boris and Natasha. He's not the Skeletor. You said it, and I had to Google it. Like, oh, it's that guy, Wacky Races. Okay. Like he didn't even come into my mind when I was like I said I was focusing on Hanna-Barbera. Like this list is keeping me guessing.
Absolutely. Dan, do you remember much about Dick Dastardly, and do you think he was deserving on being on our top 100 and the first bad character?
I do actually. One reason too is because I'm reading the Wacky Racers comic now for DC, which is very different than Hanna-Barbera. It's like Wacky Racers in the Mad Max universe.
How do they handle Dick Dastardly in that?
He's more of a anti-hero, I would say.
Huh, interesting.
He's like...
Amanda, do you even remember Dick Dastardly?
I remember Muttley. But that's because it was last. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that came up, that was probably our first example, too, of a duo that we had to consider if they were separate or if they were a pair. So that was kind of the first appearance of that in our countdown. So interesting that our first villain, Dick Dastardly from the world of Hanna-Barbera. We're going to go to yet another company now as we go to number 95. 95. I don't know how many of you will recognize this name, but this character comes from the mind and the creative genius of Art Clokey. We're going all the way back to the 1950s, or none other than Gumby. So Gumby comes in at number 95, only 1 point ahead of Dick Dastardly and Slappy Squirrel. Been around for a long time. Gumby. Amanda, top 100 worthy?
He is on my list. Can you see?
Yes, he was at number 34 on your list.
He was a big part of my childhood. I watched a lot of Gumby. He always kind of freaked me out, though, too. Like, I was a little scared of him. Like, I don't trust you, Gumby, all the way, because you can morph your body into all these different shapes. And his relationship with Pokey was such a freaking Debbie Downer. But they always came through and did something pretty cool together and had all these adventures and went to all these different worlds. And I thought it was kind of a cool concept that there was us, like regular people, and then there was like Gumby, and you saw that there was, the two, that it was very different, and his whole world was based on imagination, and it was great.
It was a lot more creative than a lot of things that were directed towards that age group. Now, Sketch, you're very similar to where Amanda had it at 34. You had it at 27. Are you a little bummed out that it's appearing already in the list and it should be higher, or do you like that he made the list overall?
I like that he made the list. I think he should be at least in the 80s, but I'm okay with it. I mean, the thing about Gumby is he was really iconic for a time, but he hasn't really been in, like, he doesn't really get noticed anymore. And that's unfortunate, but I mean, what you gonna do?
Yeah.
I mean, if I had kids, I would seek out Gumby just to show them.
Oh, absolutely.
To freak them out like you were freaked out.
Maybe they're more brave than me, okay?
Dan, your buddies, the other 2/3 of Talking in Circles had Gumby in their top 20 at number 20, and you did not have it on your list. Is a difference in opinion between the three of you, or just a character that didn't quite make the cut?
That's a good question. I guess I just forgot about it when I was putting my list together, and I probably should have had Gumby listed. That was more of an error on my part.
There's a lot of characters out there. It's hard to...
Yes. Similar to Amanda, Gumby always kind of like freaked me out a little bit. Like, I don't know, something about it always seemed off. I would agree. I think it probably should be higher because he was such a big character for such a chunk of time, but
right.
He has been somewhat forgotten. So maybe they need a little bit of a Gumby renaissance. So
Gumby-sance.
Gumby-sance. There you go. It can be voiced by Matthew McConaughey. So.
Oh my goodness. I forgot to mention.
CG.
I forgot to mention last time with Dick Dastardly, we did have a couple people that came real close because Dick Dastardly was in that 96 spot, and Steve Megatron had it at 93, and behind the voice actors, Rice and Kari had it at 92, so they were very close on that one. I actually got pretty close here with Gumby. He's coming in at the 95th spot, and I had it at number 97, so just barely snuck into my list. So, Matt, not on your list, but do you think Gumby's deserving?
Actually, Gumby came up when we were making my list, and I was like, he's not a cartoon character. But like I don't know, I enjoyed Gumby as a kid. I don't know that I'd put him on my list though, even if I wasn't making the rules that I was making.
Fair enough. All right, moving on to our number 94 pick. Actually, two people on the record today had this character in their top 15. 94. So maybe some disappointment out of a couple of you. Also, our second Hanna-Barbera character and our second quote-unquote bad character originally from the 1960s. We're going with Brack. Amanda, you had this highest on the list out of the panel at number 13.
So is this the same Brack that had his own TV show? The Brack Show? Because that is what I based this off. I didn't know he went back that far. But he was on Space Ghost, right?
Which also came from the 60s.
Yes. So I like Space Ghost. I liked Brack the best. He was so freaking weird. He looked so scary, but he was just so like fun, and you could love him. And he was, not the brightest crayon on the box, but he like lived life, and he did adventures, and he had a lot of funny things to say. He would break out in songs, and in like the Brack Show, I liked that they kind of brought him more into the now. I thought it was funny that his parents were normal and that he was whatever the fuck he was. But I had so much fun with him, and he was a part of my middle school childhood life. I was watching late night cartoons and would see him on Space Ghost and then on his own show, and there's definitely clips that I will still watch now. If I had that, I would probably just pop that in when I was cooking dinner or something. He's super fun.
You know how much you and Matt disagree on things over the course of our episodes in Cinema Geeks. Out of the thousands of characters that you guys had to choose from, Amanda, you had Brack at 13, Matt had it at 14. What? So right in line. Matt, are you disappointed that he's coming up already, or just happy that he made the list?
Definitely happy they made the list, because I didn't expect to see anyone from my list. After the first 3 or 4, I was like, oh, my guys aren't showing up. She-Ra's that high? I guess I don't get an opinion here. Just as a warning, Amanda, be very careful with Brack Show Season 2. It's very bad. A couple of years ago, me and my buddies did what we called Brack Friday. So on Black Friday, we watched all of Brack Show. It's hard to get through Season 2.
That's a good idea.
Season 1 though was so fun.
Season 1 was
he was rapping and stuff. He was treating his dad, and it was awesome.
Yeah, and right now every Saturday, me and my friends are getting together, and we're since Martin Crocker just died, as a memoriam, we're watching all of Space Ghost from episode 1 to the end. Space Ghost Coast to Coast, the one he was actually on, not the 60s one. And Brack's first appearance in the Space Ghost Coast to Coast, him and his little brother Sisto are just a clone of Beavis and Butthead. To the point where I was like, is that Mike Judge? Did they get Judge to do this? But no, just Andy Merrill just doing his best impersonation. I think he's absolutely deserving on this list. Like you said, he's in my top 20. Love Brack.
Dan, like I said, the second Hanna-Barbera character, and they were both bad characters. Is Brack more deserving than Dick Dastardly?
I think so, mostly because the way they were able to take that character and completely do something different with it. It's like Amanda's show. Not many people even realize that he was a character in the 60s, because Space Ghost was a cartoon that was long forgotten by most people. So
right.
Where they haven't really done that with Rocky Racers or anything like that. So I do think so, and I think most of the people that voted for it probably are voting not based upon the original version of it, but the updated version, which I don't know if I even had him on my list, but I was a huge fan of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and he was always a big part of it. I actually never watched the Brack Show, but I always found him very funny when I was a kid, and it scared me to realize I was watching that before I was in high school. That's how long ago that show was on. So
you brought up Wacky Races again, which made me think that they are actually supposed to be having a revival of that series. I think it's a Netflix original or a Netflix exclusive.
They've been kicking around that idea for a while.
Yeah, it's been listed a bunch of times. I don't know if it's ever going to actually happen, but that obviously not related to Brack necessarily. Sketch, what are your thoughts on Brack showing up 2 places higher than Dick Dastardly?
I'm okay with that. Let's call this the Adult Swim effect. There's some of these Hanna-Barbera characters got revisioned dramatically. If Brack from the Brack Show, Space Ghost Coast to Coast, Cartoon Planet, if that Brack didn't exist, Andy Merrill's Brack was not going to make this list at all. No freaking way. He was such a minor villain in Space Ghost, and Space Ghost is a largely forgotten show. So I put Space Ghost on my list, and that's mostly because of Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And I would very likely see Zorak popping up here somewhere. But because of Brack in that interpretation, he's a lovable character. He's very entertaining. He had multiple appearances, got his own show spun off, and he's a lot of fun. So I think it's great that he made the list. I didn't vote for him myself, but I'm happy that he made it.
I think Zorak is more evil than Brack.
Yeah.
Wait and see if who else from
Brack's not really evil at all outside of the original Space Ghost.
Yeah, I guess that's why I labeled him.
He's just a big kid.
Right.
93.
All right, for number 93, let's actually stay in the world of Hanna-Barbera for our third Hanna-Barbera character so far in the countdown. I don't know if I would have listed him in my top 10 Hanna-Barbera characters, but enough of you guys did. We're talking about the famously voiced by Don Messick and later on Joe Lasky character of Droopy. So Droopy comes in at number 93. He's had 18 different shows, movies, or games or whatever that he showed up in. Sketch, you're the only one in the panel that had him ranked on your list. You had him at number 39. What do you think about Droopy showing up again in this trio of Hanna-Barbera characters we've seen so far?
Droopy showing up already does not make me so happy. I think Droopy should be up there a bit more. Is one of those really iconic Tex Avery characters. You just and Droopy's had cameos in so many different things. So he's had quite a lifespan, all things considered. And he's just a great fun character that stood the test of time.
Happy landing.
Yeah, I know. He'll probably be right under that rock.
Nope, under this one.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm happy that he made the list at all, but I think he should be at least, I don't know, maybe the 40s.
He was ranked in the top 10 by TV's Mr. Neil. He had him the highest at number 9. Dan, do you think he gets lost in a mix of characters from that time period, and that's maybe why he didn't rank a little bit higher?
It was hard for me when it came to Hanna-Barbera because there's so many freaking Hanna-Barbera characters, so that could have been part of it too. I remember like they had it was a show in the middle 90s, and I was of Droopy Dog, and I really enjoyed that. And oddly, when I think of Droopy Dog now, I think of Jon Stewart's impression of Mitch McConnell. That's like the only thing that comes to my mind, but I'm weird like that. But yeah, so I think that's kind of the hard part when you have so many characters, and when you say Hanna-Barbera, and when I was putting my list together, I'm like, okay, there's like, just looking at the list that's there's so many of them. So just by process of elimination, I didn't want to have a list of 50 different Hanna-Barbera characters, and so I kind of chose the top 3 or top 4, and then kind of put the rest to the side. So maybe that's the reason he's not higher than he is.
A lot of people might have left him below some other Hanna-Barbera characters and ended up not having room for him. Dan, you had predicted early on that Disney might dominate this countdown. So far, we are about, 8 picks in or whatever, and we've had 3 Hanna-Barbera and 0 Disney. Are you questioning that prediction?
No, that just makes me think it's more in the top end, like it was with the movies, because we didn't have many Disney movies to start off with, and then like top 50 on, it was like, all right, here comes another Disney movie. So I'm guessing that's what's going to happen again.
Well, anybody else thoughts on Droopy before we move on to the next next countdown? All right. Speaking of Disney, let's get there for the first time.
92.
Number 92, coming from the wonderful world of Disney, originating in a play from 1904, and another female character so far. Amanda, we'll start with you on this one. Number 92, Tinkerbell. What do you think?
I can dig it. I think she's one of the first, more powerful female side characters that we get, and I think that she really builds up like girl power, and I think that she definitely is not just a straight good character. I mean, we see her do some stuff that's not so good fairy-like, and I think that shows the dynamic of women. Like, we will be your best friend, but we can be vicious too, so watch out. And I think that she's a fun character, and it's super cool that she doesn't speak, and she has a different communication style, and that adds to her character. And I think she's dynamic, and she's super cute as well. So I can dig her.
You weren't very far off. It came in at number 92, and you had her ranked at number 80, so not very far off at all. Behind the Voice Actors, Ryan Sankari had this in his top 10 at number 6. He had it the highest, but Sketch Tinkerbell was also on your list, a little bit higher at 55. How do you feel about her coming in at number 92?
I think she should be higher. I mean, if you think of Tinkerbell, she was like the mascot of the wonderful world of Disney for a long, long time. And I did want to include some female characters that I felt were really iconic. And the thing about Tinkerbell is, beyond her work as a mascot and also in Peter Pan, where she's a very flippant character, maybe not the best interpretation, but she also has this whole line of direct-to-video movies now where she is the heroine, so that brings a whole nother level to the character. And I think those versions in particular, I haven't really seen them, but it seems like they're good, positive role models, and I wanted to highlight that in my list. And on the other side, you have the Tinkerbell, who's kind of a brat, and it's entertaining. So I like characters with multiple personalities, I guess.
There we go. Matt, I asked Dan the same question last time. Do you think Tinkerbell got, it did not appear on a lot of lists. Do you think that's another factor, like we were talking about with Hanna-Barbera, where there's so many Disney characters that maybe people didn't have room for another one in the form of Tinkerbell?
See, I don't know that that's a thing for Disney. Like if you say like, I don't know if I want to keep putting on Looney Tunes characters, it's one thing. But if it's like Disney characters, like they're so iconic. Every Disney character has like just a massive reach where like people that might not have even seen the movie. Like I've never seen Peter Pan. I've seen as much Tinkerbell in the Peter Pan movie as I have, say, the Pirate Fairy. Like I have a big gap in my knowledge, but I can recognize Tinkerbell like that. I think with the Disney characters, they're all like that. I imagine if anyone had even a little bit of like of her, she made it on the list.
Yeah. Our oldest so far, or as far as origin goes, all the way back to 1904. Dan, surprised or not that Tinkerbell makes the list?
I'm actually more surprised she's not a little higher. I think for me, I didn't have her very high or listed because as a character, just thinking of the Disney film within itself, she wasn't much of a character. And like Sketch mentioned, she had a huge impact just being the icon that she was, but I guess, again, when I was talking about ranking the quality of the character as a whole, as someone who's not watched the direct-to-DVD animated Tinkerbell movies because I'm 32 and I don't want to be put on lists, I don't know her personality outside of the movie. So I do, though, like she certainly has her place, and maybe if we all clap, she'll get higher, but I don't know.
Excellent. All right, so Tinkerbell came in at number 92.
91.
Number 91, only 1 point higher. Another female character and another new company heard from as we go to the world of Laika. And we're talking about the character that originated in the novel from 2002, and then very shortly after that, the film, and that would be none other than Coraline, coming in at number 91. Dan, we'll go right back to you. You had Coraline ranked at 55. Are you upset that she's not higher, or, like I keep saying, just happy she's on the list?
I'm just happy she got invited. Yeah. I think this is fine. I love that movie and love her as a character. Coming from the Neil Gaiman book, and I thought the representation of her in the movie was pretty spot on. Wow, I'm really surprised how many female characters we're starting off with. Not that that's a bad thing, but I'm just, knowing that this is mostly all guys putting together, that's actually kind of impressive. A little bit. I don't know if impressive is the right word. Anyways, but I
progressive?
Progressive, there you go. When you have children characters, it's that challenge of being inquisitive and being annoying, and she's inquisitive and intriguing. She still feels like a legitimate character in the way that she's not wise above her years. She's got a lot of growth with her, and she's got a very relatable story. So that's a big reason why I had her as high on my list as I did. So
yeah, top 20 for in-session film, and number 16 for Kristen. Amanda, you're a big fan of Coraline, but did not have room for her in your top 100. So what did you think about this one?
I thought I did have her in my list, but if I didn't, a little sad because I do share Dan's love for Coraline. I think that her parents make her seem a lot more annoying and trying than she really is, and it shows like their realization about how much they love her through the film and how much they kind of took her for granted. And I think that she is somebody who is full of questions and wonder and wants to know, and she definitely went through something here that was unique, and the story and the visuals were super amazing. So I think her and her story are definitely deserving of being on this list.
All right, so a lot of love for Coraline, which earned her a spot in our top 100. Moving on to number 90.
90.
First off, I do want to apologize ahead of time. I should have done this before we started the list. But as you guys hopefully know, if you're listening to us over at the Cinema Geeks, we are currently doing a retrospective series where we're going through all of the films of Hayao Miyazaki, and we're only about halfway through so far. So I have not learned all the proper pronunciations from all the characters from his films, or slightly ignorant to some anime as well. So when I mispronounce stuff throughout the remainder of the countdown, just forgive me beforehand. For number 90, we're going to go into that world. From Princess Mononoke, we're going to, hopefully I say this right, Ashitaka? Anybody?
Prince Ashitaka.
Close enough.
All right, Prince Ashitaka from the 1997 film. Matt, I'll let you start because you are on the Cinema Geeks, kind of the Miyazaki expert of us. So what do you think of Prince Ashitaka coming in at number 90?
I think he's a great choice. Like I said earlier, I kept anime off, but if I had, he might have made my list. He's like a great stock fantasy character where it's like this bad thing happens to him, and he's a prince. Now he's got to go on an adventure to save his kingdom and his life, as well as to like restore honor to his clan, which is a very Eastern idea that culminates in this massive, sprawling, magical story. Like, great character, great story arc. This is a perfect choice for a top 100. Thumbs up to whoever put him on their lists.
Well, speaking of whoever put him on the list, In Session Film had him all the way up at number 7. That's the highest anybody had it. Dan, you also had on your list at number 33. What do you think of our first entry as far as the world of anime goes?
Glad we have some, because I know that's always an issue when it comes to any animated list, when it comes to Geekcast Radio, so that's great. It's just funny that this comes into what we're a couple weeks away from actually covering this movie. So Princess Mononoke is my favorite Miyazaki film, and he's a big reason why. Like Matt mentioned, he's a great fantasy character. He has a strong story, and as we're going through all those movies, you really see those really rich characters that have a lot of dimension to him, and that's certainly the case. So I'm happy, very happy that he made the list. I would have hoped he was maybe top 50, but, with Geekcast Radio, when it comes to anime, we grade on a curve, so I'll just say this is whatever 20 list, whatever he is now, add 22 or minus 20 to it, and that's really, really where he falls. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
89.
All right, moving on to number 89, and another company that we have not heard from yet. We're going to go to the world of Amblin Entertainment. Actually originated in a book, 1981, but more popularized, obviously, in the film. And we're talking about the one and only Roger Rabbit. Also appeared on 7 lists. That's the highest we've had so far. Appeared on 7 of the 15 lists, but 6 of those people had him in the 60s, 70s, 80s, that range. So that's why he's not any higher, even though he did appear on 7 lists. The highest he got was ranked at number 39. Dan, you had Roger Rabbit at 77. He's coming in at 89. Since we just talked to you, why don't you start here? What do you think of Roger Rabbit making the list?
It was hard ranking Roger Rabbit because it's one of those characters where he very much is meant to be a representation and reflection of other characters. So it's like, does he count? Like, how do you rank him as a character? That's where I struggled. It's like, do I put him up higher? So I do feel like, Roger Rabbit is such a landmark animation. Because of that, he's deserving to put on there. So I felt, in the 70s was a good spot for him. But, he can be a little annoying as a character, but that's kind of the point. But I do think just based upon the impact of that movie and the characters within it, and the fact that he landed Jessica Rabbit somehow, you got to give him props for that.
So yeah, his rankings on the list were 77, 63, 66, 85, 58, 39, and 82. So a little bit of a range, but a lot of people here in that 60 to 80 range. Amanda, you were one of them at 82, and it came in at 89. So do you think that's pretty spot on?
Yeah, I do, because it's only a few off of mine, and I like to be right. But I agree with Dan. He's kind of annoying, but he's got to have, like, mad game if he got Jessica Rabbit. I don't know what was up with that, but I think that he had a ton of heart. He was super selfless. He had the best of intentions for everything that he did, and I think that he's a really good, solid character.
Matt, as far as the little one-on-one versus matchups, and one of them that we did post was Roger Rabbit versus Jessica Rabbit, as far as which one was the better character. If we're seeing Roger Rabbit on 89 at the 89 spot, does that mean that we will not see Jessica Rabbit, or does that mean we should expect to see her even higher?
So part of me wants to be like, she's probably lower. Because the story, it's not her story. It kind of is, but it's not really. But at the same time, he said these lists are almost all guys, and she's Jessica Rabbit. So I don't know how to swing this one. I think if I had put him on my list, I probably would have put him above her. So that's what I'm gonna go with.
I actually have a lesbian friend that I went to school with, and she shared her experience when she first realized she was gay was when she saw Jessica Rabbit.
I can believe it.
So I'm sure. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I'm pretty sure she made a man out of a lot of boys.
Sketch, you had Roger at 58. A little upset that he's not higher?
No, not at all. I think particularly Roger Rabbit is a character that I included more so because of the movie and how big of a deal that movie was. As a character himself, he's a good character. he's an interesting character. He is kind of a flanderization of various other characters, all combined into one. But as a singular character, he's all right. But because of the movie being that important, I feel like that brings him up to a certain level, but I wouldn't have him higher than this.
Fair enough.
88.
All right. I haven't mentioned it because I guess I haven't wanted to point it out, but when we get to number 88, it's going to be the first character that's actually been on my list for, let's see, I'm on a drought here. The last 6 characters did not make my list, so we're finally at one that was on my list, so I'm going to have somebody to talk about, hopefully, here at number 88. Going back into the world of anime and going to the character that first appeared in the 1951 manga, we're talking about the classic, maybe the godfather, I guess, to a lot of Western audiences as far as anime goes, and we're talking about Astro Boy from way back when. So Astro Boy coming in at number 88. Dan, you had him at 66 and I had him at 67, so we were almost lockstep on that. What do you think about Astro Boy showing up on the countdown?
He's one I don't honestly have a huge amount of experience with. I do remember the recent film that was, I want to say a decade ago, was really like my major experience with him, but this is one I ranked solely, honestly, on reputation, just because I know his place within animation is pretty astounding. It's expanded years. I know there's been video games. He's a huge major character, kind of along the lines of Speed Racer. So because of that, and because of his impact on the genre, that's kind of where I ranked him and why I put him on my list.
I think we posted a matchup of Astro Boy and Speed Racer. Maybe I could be wrong, but I don't think it got hardly any comments, which surprised me. But maybe that's more so because a lot of people have experience with the character. And I'm like you, Dan. I mainly ranked him based on reputation and the fact that I just thought from an impact standpoint he deserved a spot on the list. Sketch, you maybe know a little bit more about Astro Boy because you had him all the way up at number 23. What do you think of Astro Boy showing up on the countdown?
Maybe I look like a poser, but honestly, I don't. I just know that Tetsuwan Atom is a huge character around the world, and to this day, it's still very popular. And it was one of the, well, I mean, honestly, like the first big anime hit in America and other parts of the world. He's a good character. He's a good archetype. I feel like he's a lot like Mega Man, to make a video game character comparison. And it's also kind of like not a modernization per se, but like a scientific version of Pinocchio. And he's a good character. He's an earnest character. He's a lot of fun. He does all these cool things with all of the weapons that he has. He has guns in his butt. So there's that.
What? I got machine guns in my butt? You gotta be kidding.
But the most I've seen of Astro Boy is a little bit of the old shorts. I saw them. They ran them on Adult Swim for a while because apparently Mike Lazo, head of Adult Swim, adores Astro Boy. So they played a whole bunch of that. And the 2000-something series, that aired briefly on Kids WB and Toonami. And I saw some of that, and it seemed all right, but it was also kind of not the best dub. So I didn't pay too much attention to it. But I like the concept a lot, and the character is enjoyable by himself. I just think he's really iconic, and therefore I put him really, really up there on my list.
Yeah. Amanda, a character that has a lot of history. Have you ever seen anything involving Astro Boy?
I know what he looks like.
All right, before your time for the most part.
87.
Going to number 87. Again, my apologies if I'm saying this wrong. Tetsuo from Akira. Correct pronunciation of
Tetsuo! Canada!
So from the character that originated in the 1982 manga, another anime character, Dan, you had him ranked fairly high on your list, right around the midway point. What do you think of him showing up here at number 87?
Is this a first for Animated Countdown with Geekcast Radio? 2 anime characters back to back? Before.
And 3 out of the last 4.
I know. Wow, that's pretty cool. I remember when it came out, or at least when it was big in growing up as a kid in the 80s and 90s, when the only way you can get it was like if you called the 800 number or whatever, or got a pirated copy, or so that's a big reason why Akira holds a place with me.
You want to call
Again,
an
like-
800 number or a 900 number? Because that's confusing. What are you doing here? Would you call it 800 number for a TV show?
You'd have to call it and order it and stuff like that. Like you couldn't just like
Get
go
your
to the
mind
store
over
and
there.
pick it up.
Commercials on TV. It's like, check out this amazing animation from Japan.
Oh, it was like a mail order thing. Like you had to get it in the mail.
Yeah. Back
It's
in the
for
day,
those of us
when-
that lived before the internet.
Yeah, you couldn't just like download things. It was weird. Like you
Line
gotta wait for
Dubs
it to.
days.
But anyways, I do feel like Kira's often the first anime film when people talk about anime that are maybe have a general knowledge of it. They're like, oh, you mean like Akira, and because of that, like I felt like he had a place on my list. And I don't know as a character if he's super strong, but do enjoy that movie a great deal. So similar to Roger Rabbit in the way ranking him because of the impact of the film was the same mindset here.
A lot of love from the movie podcast submitters because In Session Film had him at number 12, and the first time we're mentioning simplistic reviews since the introduction had them all the way up at number 2. That is, I think, the highest we've seen show up so far. So had them all the way to number 2, and simplistic reviews is probably not listening anymore because we've only had 2 people that have shown up on their list so far with Brock and Dick Dastardly. So Akira character showing up all the way up at number 2 on their list. Matt, I know you like a lot of anime, but you disqualified them. If you were including them, how high would this character land on your list?
I don't know. I feel like I have a sordid history with Akira. It was one of the very first things that really cemented anime in my mind. It was this and Princess Mononoke. I saw them in like late middle school, and then I was like, they're doing like this is probably when I stopped caring about Looney Tunes. It was like, what is America doing? Like, why are we even trying? Because Japan's got us beat. And I love Akira, but at the same time, I haven't seen it in 15 years. And so it's like, I would put it on, I'd put someone on my list from it if I was doing anime just because of the reference, but I can't really point to like one of the 2 really big characters and be like, this one's more important or this one's more entertaining.
Gotcha. All right, so like Dan said, the second anime in a row and the third and the last 4 picks. We'll have to see if that trend continues or
I just
not.
want to chime in here.
Go ahead.
I don't think Tetsuo is worthy of this list at all. I don't think he's a good enough character.
Why do you say that?
He's just kind of a whiny brat. Really? It's the movie itself is stunningly animated. Definitely a classic. Anybody who loves animation should see Akira. But Tetsuo is a character. He's like an annoying brat. He gets superpowers. He's overwhelmed by them, and then he's not that good a character. I don't like him. Maybe it's personal bias that I just don't like the guy. But yeah, if he's on this list, I think he should be more in the 90s. But whatever.
I think I'm actually going to have to agree with him because I couldn't I couldn't remember whether he was the antagonist or protagonist, and it sounds like
Kaneda's not that good either.
Oh, okay. I feel like if Sketch saw my list, he'd be very upset, especially in my top 10.
Here's why I like Kaneda, because he was voiced by Cam Clark in that one dub.
Nice.
All right, so some dissenting opinions here on the Akira character showing up. So you definitely, listeners will have to chime in and let us know what you guys think of that appearance or not.
86.
As we move on to number 86, we're going to have a couple firsts here. First time we had a character that originated in the 70s, 1973. First time we had a character that originated on a comic strip. And the first time we've seen a character from the company, regardless of which version you go to, either Ruby Spears or GEEK Entertainment. For number 86, we're going to Heathcliff, the lovable cat. Amanda, we had a matchup on the Facebook page, Heathcliff versus Garfield. Where do you sit on that debate? And is Heathcliff worthy of being on our list here at number 86?
I think Heathcliff can be here if Garfield is much higher, which I'm thinking he probably is. Although I think that maybe we should have done the matchup and forced either one out. Like, I think that they're pretty similar, but I think Garfield definitely ranks above Heathcliff. It's kind of similar personalities. I remember a lot more Garfield than I do Heathcliff, but I think that Heathcliff is kind of like quintessential 80s kind of vibe, even though he came out in the 70s, right?
1973 as far as the comic strip goes.
I felt like it was like
the
some
first
80s
cartoon
stuff.
was more so 1979, 1980, 81, that range.
And it was definitely more, fun and gritty. Like, dude was on the street. Like, Garfield was just chilling in his house. You know what I mean? Like, this dude
Heathcliff had the street cred.
Yeah, he had the street cred.
Anybody else on that debate between Heathcliff and Garfield, and if Heathcliff has shown up in '86, should we expect Garfield to still show up later on in the countdown?
I have a comparison to make. Heathcliff is like if you mashed together Garfield and Top Cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good comparison there. I always felt like overall Heathcliff was a poor man's Garfield, but literally a poor man's Garfield. He's out on the street, right? But
some people don't get handed their lasagna; they have to dig through the garbage for it. Okay.
That's right. But Heathcliff was always like with the fish bones and.
Yeah.
No, Heathcliff and his whole crew just I'm okay with
bring the Cadillac Cats with it. If you get to bring the Cadillac Cats, then Heathcliff gets some bonus points.
Yeah, that is a better supporting cast overall, maybe. But nah, I like Garfield way more.
Heathcliff made it on to number 81 on my list. It comes in at number 86. Dan, obviously not on a lot of people's list. They showed up on 6 lists overall. Do you think he's worthy or not?
Worthy? I don't know. I guess so. I was never a Heathcliff fan personally. Every time I watched the show as a kid, I just was bored. I don't know why. It did not click with me. And I guess I'm like, I'd rather watch Garfield because I find him funny. And I never found Heathcliff funny. So I guess you could say he's certainly deserving because he was a pretty prominent character for such a long time. But as a character, is just simply the quality of it. I was never a fan of it. So I'm indifferent overall.
Also forgot to mention that it's another first. It's the first time that we have seen a character voiced by the legend himself, Mel Blanc. And I would only expect that we're going to see a few more along the way.
Oh, that's right.
Matt, what do you think about Heathcliff coming in right now?
Like, I want to rep Heathcliff because I feel like Garfield stole his shit and then got more popular.
That might be true.
It's like if you've ever seen the Robot Chicken court case of Heathcliff v. Garfield. I feel like they set it out, humorously, but they set it out pretty well. Like Heathcliff was created when Jim Davis was 2 years old. And then Jim Davis shows up I'm just gonna make a funnier Heathcliff and give him a better life. And I feel no doubt Garfield's more popular, more known worldwide, bigger pop culture influence. But it's he's just a copycat, if you will.
That's a fair point. Yeah, he has a fair point.
We'll have to wait and let the debate about Heathcliff and Garfield rage on, and maybe we'll have to revisit it if Garfield shows up later on in the countdown. We'll have to wait and see.
85.
Moving on to number 85. Going back to a female character. It's been a little bit. And we're also back to a character, an anime character, Dan, and that is number 85, Nausicaa. You had Nausicaa rated the highest at 18. What do you feel like coming all the way down here at number 85?
It's funny because 6 months ago she wanted to be on my list, but because doing the retrospective, we did get a chance to watch Nausicaa: Valley of the Wind, and I was just really surprised by how much I really enjoyed that character. And when we talked about the film, and I won't go into huge detail here, but just the complications she was dealing with as a character and all the different things she had to level, where she had all these different forces trying to kind of come together and take over this world, and she I don't know, I just felt like her overall plate was really intriguing, and as a character that she always surprised me.
I didn't recognize you.
It's been over a year now. It's great to see you.
Thank you for helping me with that Om. You've certainly mastered that glider of yours.
You think so? Father says I have a long way to...
Oh, yes. I forgot all about this little fellow. He's the reason I got in trouble with the Om.
Wow. Is that a fox squirrel? I've never seen one.
I hadn't either. I saw an insect carrying him off, and I mistook him for a human baby. I had no choice but to use my gun.
Oh, so that's why the Om was so angry with you.
He's quite spirited. Apparently, he didn't inhale too much of the jungle's poison. Better not touch him. Even the babies are vicious.
Come on. It's okay.
Careful.
There's nothing to fear. Nothing to fear. See? Nothing to fear.
Before that, I've watched a lot of Mamizuki films, but going back to that one, seeing that for the first time, knowing it's really his first big epic and first really creator-owned, this is him coming out party. I just was really impressed with how she kind of set the stage for a lot of characters that were to come. So I felt like, in a way, ranking her that high was in almost representation of a lot of the characters Manzuki was creating, because there are elements of her that I think you can probably put in a lot of his best characters. So because of that, I had her in my top 20. I mean, obviously, I would prefer if she was higher, but like I said, when it comes to anime in these lists, we tend to grade on a curve. So I'm happy that she's at least here. So,
Matt, this is let's see, the fourth anime character that's come up here. We had Ashitaka, Astro Boy, Tetsuo, if I'm saying any of those right, and now Nausicaa. How do you feel as far as the ordering of that goes, and do you think they're all worthy, or is Nausicaa specifically worthy of being in the top 100?
I've said it probably every time we've done a movie in the Miyazaki retrospective. I would rate the lowest Miyazaki movie like a 7, and most of them around the 10 range. You're never going to hear me complain about a character making it on this list, even if it's just like, how about the younger sister from Totoro? It's like they're all deserving. Like, I could do a top 100 Studio Ghibli characters list without batting an eye. So, like, I just hope other characters make it higher. That's my piece on that.
All right, Sketch, you were the dissenting opinion first as far as the last anime character goes. Do you think Nausicaa is more deserving?
Very. I think Nausicaa is a great character. She's really the archetype for Miyazaki's heroine characters. As Daniel said, you can see her personality in many of the other characters to come after her. And if you look back on Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind is a fantastic movie. I feel like Miyazaki was really on point with all of his social commentary in that movie in particular, and it's kind of gotten out of hand since then. But Nausicaa as a character is a very strong female character. She fights her own battles. She's trying to bring together these two worlds, and she's admirable as a character. And there's not that many really great female anime characters that I can think of, and Nausicaa's definitely up there.
Amanda, you just recently obviously watched this for the Spotlight as well, but Nausicaa did not make your list. How close was she?
Besides the fact that she's a really great character and strong female lead, super likable, very skilled, and worthy of the respect that you see that she gets, I wasn't as impacted by her as a lot of the other characters on my list. Like, this was a very nostalgic list for me, and she just didn't find any room there because I had so many other picks that I thought were more deserving based on the impact that they actually had on my life, whereas I saw this as an adult and wasn't really impacted.
All right, fair.
I mean, I enjoyed the story, and I think that she was fun, but just wasn't as impactful for me.
Makes sense. 84. All right, next up on the countdown, number 84, possibly the Sophie's choice of the countdown, perhaps, as one of you brought up in the introduction. How do you choose between four brothers? Well, number 84, we have from the original 1984 Mirage comic book, Donatello, which I guess will lead to a lot of questions amongst the group. How do you go about rating these guys? Do you rate all four of them? Do you pick your favorite? Amanda, how do you feel about Donatello?
He's not my favorite turtle, but I definitely dealt with the same kind of conundrum here. I'm like, I could have all 5 of them on here easily, but I did just stick with my absolute faves. I forced myself to just pick, and I think I went with, should I even reveal that yet? I think I went with Michelangelo and Raphael. I was Raphael like 3 times for Halloween when I was little, so I had to put him on there. But, Donnie, he's a good, solid choice. You know what I mean? If you're going to go with a group, I guess go with the leader. So there you go.
Dan, do you think it plays into their detriment when it comes to a list like this, that there was 4 of them that were not necessarily might not have ever stood out above the others as far as the depictions in the cartoons or the movies? You might have had your own personal favorite, but does the fact that there was 4 of them hurt their chances more in a countdown like this?
I think so, because it's really just which one do you kind of relate it to most, really. I mean, like, which one, like Michelangelo, you could probably argue is probably the most popular, perhaps, but then you go to Leonardo, who's probably the pseudo leader. So it's challenging if you vote them together, I guess. I mean, and so that's hard because they're so they're so tied to one another in a way. When we talked about Inside Out and how Joy by definition was a limited character, it's just kind of the same type of process with the turtles. They're meant to not be, they're meant to be, yes, they're their own individual characters, but they're meant to complement one another, so that kind of makes it complicated. So when I ranked them, I just went with which one I personally had more relation to, when I think was Donatello, but I don't think I could argue that he's a better character than any of the other ones. So.
Sketch, you also had Donatello listed on your ranking. Do you think he's the most deserving of the turtles? Should we expect to see more turtles if we see Donatello at this number, or what are your thoughts?
I would not be surprised to see Raphael or Michelangelo show up. Unfortunately, Leonardo is kind of the weakest link. In most interpretations, he's just kind of boring. So I don't think we'll see Leonardo, but I would easily see Mike or Raph pop up. I almost had one or both of them on my list too. I decided to go with Donatello. For one thing, to fill a niche, I didn't really have a geek character except for Donatello. And there are certainly some other arguably more iconic geek characters, but as far as a well-rounded character who is also iconic, very popular, has had many interpretations, I think Donatello is like the quintessential geek superhero character in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
I really like every interpretation of Donatello. I do not, in fact, like every interpretation of all the turtles. I think in the 2003 series, Leonardo was really strong. I like Leonardo in the 2012 series, maybe the most of all versions of Leonardo, because he's also kind of a nerd, and that's a good addition to his character. Michelangelo is a bit insufferable in the 2003 cartoon because he's the comic relief, and they kind of just thrust everything onto him to break the tension. Raphael's good in pretty much everything, and Donatello even more so. So I feel like no matter what interpretation of Ninja Turtles you have, Donatello is great. In the 2007 animated movie, I wish there was more Donatello, because that kind of snarky, over it interpretation of Donatello, where it's like, I can't believe I have to deal with this crap still, is a great version of Donatello. And I feel like the 2012 version of Donatello is a lot like that, but maybe a little bit more toned down. But a sarcastic, kind of high-strung Donatello is even better than a really smart, nerdy one. So I think overall, every version of Donatello is great, but Donatello among the turtles, if I had to only pick one, even though Michelangelo for many years was by far my favorite turtle. Plus, if we're going to throw video games into this, you're always Donatello in the video games. Come on, everybody's Donatello.
Matt, he brings up a good point about Donatello being a geek character, and this is obviously a Geek Cast Radio network. Does that make sense that he is the turtle that's showing up, or should we expect a couple more?
I mean, it's an interesting thought where he said he didn't have enough geek representation. I guess, I didn't think about that. Everyone approaches these lists differently, and hearing so many people say that Raphael and Michelangelo are hyper popular is weird, because those two I would rate really low in my Turtles experience. So Donatello would be my 1 or 2, and him showing up now, to me is well, are they really gonna put Leonardo above Donatello? If no other turtles showed up, I wouldn't be surprised. But if another turtle showed up, I also wouldn't be surprised. If I had put them on my list, I would have put all 4 turtles together, because again, it's hard to separate them out.
Okay. Well, it's been a while since we had a tie, so let's head to one next.
83.
Tying here for in the 82nd/83rd spot with 259 points. We have 2 different characters. Let's start with the loser of the tiebreaker, and that would be our first character from the world of Hasbro, as certain people may be rolling their eyes out there. Originated in the 1982 comic book. Also, been a while since we had a bad character. So let's go to, with number 83 choice, Cobra Commander. Interesting here, was in one person's top 10, in one person's top 20, and one person's top 25. So the people that ranked him very high. I'll start, because when it came to villains, especially 80s cartoon villains or action villains, I kind of used what we talked about, Dan, in the beginning, where if I was going to put one on there, I narrowed it down to probably just one. Because obviously there's a ton of those type of archetype characters, I guess you could say. So Cobra Commander did actually not make my list at all, but he is here nonetheless on the countdown here, number 83. Dan, is he the best out of the 80s action villains, or is he not deserving to be mentioned here in the top 100?
The best out of 80s action villains? That's a good question. I guess you would have to just, based on popularity, him and like Megatron would be neck and neck. I was always more of a G.I. Joe fan, personally, than Transformers. So I would say, yeah, I would maybe lean toward Cobra, but as a character, I don't really think he's super strong. I think I'm happy where he's at, and I'm actually surprised he's not up much higher. He just was, I don't know, like he was just the 80s villain. He's evil and talks kind of like a snake. But I don't know.
Ignition transmitter ready?
Yes, Commander. I am about to make the first test.
Success at last, Destro. By tomorrow, the United States shall be ours.
So like he was always a fine character for me, but to me he was always more memorable because of the way he looked than his actual characteristics. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Definitely had an iconic voice too from Chris Latta that we same voice, obviously very similar to what he used for Starscream. Matt, any love for Cobra Commander, or how do you think he rates when it comes to ranking characters like this?
Well, I messed up. I did a shorter list. I didn't do the full 100, and I put the G.I. Joes at the very end of my list and none of the Cobra guys. But thinking on it, I feel like the G.I. Joes, like, I don't know, I don't really feel like a connection to any one of them. Like, no G.I. Joe stands out. But with the Cobra, the Cobra Enterprise, like Cobra Commander, Baroness, like Destro, they're all, I feel like, more fleshed out individual characters. Like, I'm glad he made it the top 100. He may be a little bit higher than he deserves. But when you compare action guys and you're saying Cobra or Megatron, it's like, where's Skeletor at in this? Is he not action enough?
Another 80s action villain. Yeah, there's quite a few you could go to. There's a lot of them out there. Even like someone like Shredder or someone could probably qualify as
absolutely Shredder. Come on, Shredder and Krang. Oh my gosh, Krang. Krang is fantastic.
Gosh, what do you think about Cobra Commander?
I think Cobra Commander is a good 80s villain. I think for a while I was debating between him and some others. I mean, kind of the archetype for that would have been Skeletor, I feel. And maybe Cobra Commander's kind of pretty much as good. I feel like there are maybe better 80s iconic supervillains. But Cobra Commander, he is a great character. Fantastic voice, very iconic. I'm not too surprised to see him on the list. I think he's placing a little too well on the list, but I'm not necessarily opposed to him being here. I may be more opposed depending on what other iconic villains pop up, but I don't know. It's really hard to say. There's also multiple interpretations of this character. The short run G.I. Joe Renegades, I think was the name of the show that was on the Hub.
Yeah. Yep.
That one, Cobra Commander was a really commanding presence, and I like that interpretation of Cobra Commander. The old 80s one, I may turn some heads here, but I feel like G.I. Joe is better than Transformers Generation 1. So in that way, I would maybe, but it's weird because I think I would still rate Megatron over Cobra Commander, but man, I don't know.
In our 80s tournament, our 80s villain tournament that we did a few years back, Cobra Commander did not make it to the finale. I believe the finale of that was Skeletor and Megatron. Amanda, any thoughts on all these boys action cartoons from the 80s and the villains? Do you think Cobra Commander is worthy?
Sure. I don't have a ton of experience with G.I. Joe. It was before my time. a little bit there with, I think in this time I was watching like Sesame Street and stuff where you guys were getting down on Transformers and all that, where I know a little bit more about Transformers than I do G.I. Joe. And, I dug the new movies, like the live action movies. I dug them. I think that definitely iconic voice work and definitely somebody that people know. He's, pretty big in pop culture. So I can definitely agree with him being on the list. As far as ranking, I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, sure, he's a good spot at this one.
All right.
82.
Moving on then to the person that won the tiebreaker with Cobra Commander, and going back somewhere where we haven't been for a little while. Let's go back to the world of Hanna-Barbera. Interesting that they're both in this part of the countdown. We're going to the 1966 original TV character here, Space Ghost himself. So we had Brock earlier, now we get Space Ghost. Matt, let's start with you.
I don't even know what to say. Like, he's been around for forever. He had a TV show in the 60s that was terrible. Like, I don't know if anyone on the panel's ever watched it, but the original Space Ghost show had a pretty simple format. Space Ghost is a badass superhero. He finds himself without his powers, and then a monkey saves him every single episode.
But that Gary owns.
Oh, it's unreal. But then, again, revived in the 90s with Space Ghost Coast to Coast. He then has appeared in a lot of other things, like The Bragg Show, I believe 12 Ounce Mouse, probably Aqua Teens, considering they started on his show. Like, he's one of my favorite characters in any form ever. I have a costume that I should not wear because I'm a large guy and it's very white. I can't talk enough about how much I love Space Ghost. I spent way too much money on Space Ghost.
Matt, you are the first person to see their number one pick fall. Are you sad about that?
I am not surprised. I'm actually surprised he made the list even at all. Like I said, my list is not the normal list.
Dan, reading off the rankings that people gave to Space Ghost, outside of number one for Matt, we had a 50, a 68, a 69, a 76, and an 83. So it seems like there's some agreement as far as the placement goes. Falls a little bit down here to number 82. What do you think of Space Ghost being another Hanna-Barbera character that appears so far on the list?
I think this is a pretty good spot for him, like Matt mentioned. I think this is all in like with Brack. This is, I think, more of a ranking based upon the reimagining of the character in the 90s. And, that show that came out, Coast to Coast, in the mid-90s was so ahead of its time. It really pioneered the whole Adult Swim movement that came. It just, watching it now, just like the awkward humor, like I'm surprised they were able to get away with what they did at that time. I'm sure getting the celebrities on the show that they were able to, and having them interviewed by a cartoon, I could imagine how confused everyone was at the time. So he was just like this really unique, not only character, but me reimagining what Cartoon Network was going to be. It wasn't just going to be a place where you watch old cartoons over and over again, and maybe some people prefer that. But I think because of the impact he has as a character originally, and then later in his second life, he's certainly deserving, and you could probably argue maybe he should be a little higher than he is. But yeah,
I'd like to go to
maybe he gets negative points for being so bad previously.
Could be. I'd like to go to Amanda next, because Amanda, you had Brack all the way up Brack at 13. Space Ghost not on your list at all.
I do enjoy some Space Ghost. I did the duel between Brack and Space Ghost, and instead of having them both on, since they were both kind of grouped together with my exposure, the first time I even saw Brack was on Space Ghost Coast to Coast, but I ended up identifying more with Brack, if that makes any sense. But I think Space Ghost is definitely iconic, definitely deserving of being on this list. He was hilarious. I really enjoyed Coast to Coast. I thought it was super fun, him interviewing the celebrities and whatnot, and his humor was definitely dull, definitely funny. I want to go back and watch this as an adult now, and I think I'll enjoy it even more, but it was definitely a fun time, and his cohorts and him have a great relationship, and he tried to be a ladies' man, didn't he? Like, he tried to, put the Mac down, I think, and it was hilarious.
Sketch, any comments on Space Ghost before we make our way to the next entry?
Yeah, Space Ghost Coast to Coast is a fantastic show, a real pioneer for that kind of humor for older viewers. and it really opened the doors to Adult Swim, and Adult Swim's huge now. It's like one of the most successful networks on television now. And Space Ghost Coast to Coast as a show is very entertaining. It's really dry. It's kind of an odd humor to it. But you took a really earnest, by the book, super powerful superhero from way back when, and you turned him into a narcissist asshole who interviewed celebrities, and it was always funny. And the one thing that I'm sad about here is I'm pretty sure we're not going to have Zorak on this list now if Space Ghost is at this. Maybe not, but if Zorak doesn't make it, I'll be a little disappointed. He wasn't on my list because as far as characters go, I feel like he falls off the list just a little bit. But I think this is generally a good place for Space Ghost, maybe a little higher. But if Zorak doesn't make it, that's a shame. And rest in peace, Martin C. Croker.
Absolutely.
81.
All right, making our way to number 81. We've only had two other characters on this side of the year 2000 until now, so this is our third post-2000 character, also our second Pixar character. We're going to go from the 2007 film Ratatouille with number 81 on the countdown being Remy. Sure to make at least one Geekcast Radio Network person rolling his eyes and upset, but hey, he's not here, so we don't have to deal with that.
Are you talking about Mike?
Yes.
Oh, punch him right in the face, right in his eyeballs.
So, Amanda, let's start with you. You had Remy ranked at number 72. He comes in at number 81. How do you feel?
Pretty good, because that's pretty damn close. I love Remy. That movie makes me just really, really happy. Like, it's such a feel-good movie. It makes me hungry. It makes me think of sitting in the living room with my family, eating some nice cheese and having crackers and watching this mouse really do something that he was passionate about. He really was passionate. He went against everything that he was and everything his family told him that he should be, and went against his species, really, and did something awesome because he was passionate about it, and he followed through with it, and he got a little disheartened, but the camaraderie that he built up with his new friends and managed to kind of mend some relationships that he was having issues with really was heartfelt, and I loved it. And I think that I want like a sequel. I don't know if it would be as good as Ratatouille, but I think that I would like to see more of Remy and his relationships.
Dan, you had this one ranked as well, as did I. I had it a little bit lower. I had it at 98. Dan, you had it all the way up at number 36. A little disappointed that it's on this side of the halfway mark and coming out already, or just happy to see another Pixar character?
I mean, I'm happy seeing another Pixar character. I do think we should be on the other side of the top 50. Just being a huge Patton Oswalt fan, I think he lends a lot of personality to that character through his voice, and he's just a really good everyman character that anyone who's ever had a dream of doing something that is outside the norm of the box that maybe society puts on you. And I think there's a lot of great representation for that character, and it's an odd story of a mouse who wants to be a chef, but that's kind of what's great about it. So I don't know. I've always found him really appealing, and there's not a lot of with a lot of some of these characters, that they have an iconic look to them, or they have certain aspects to them, like a Donatello that's part of the Ninja Turtles, where this is just kind of a rat with a dream, but he's simple in that way. So to me, one of the stronger Pixar characters, as we mentioned with Inside Out, how those characters as a whole work together, but individually not so much, where Remy, I feel, did, as he was the biggest part of that character, or that movie, obviously. So.
Well, so three of us had Remy ranked, and two did not. Does that mean that there are some dissenting opinions on the panel from Matt and Sketch, or just not enough room for Remy on your countdown? Just
not quite enough room. Remy is a good character. Yeah, as he said, it was a good everyman character, working around the box that society puts you in. Because I feel like Remy probably loses some points because he is a rat. But what you gonna do? But as far as an individual character goes in a Pixar movie, he is a really good character as an individual, which you can't say about a whole lot of Pixar characters. A lot of them kind of rely on a duo or being in a group. But Remy stole the show. So there's that. I gotta say one thing about that movie. Too many rats in the kitchen for my liking. Oh, man.
I saw a video yesterday of a real live rat playing a friggin' peekaboo with its owner.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah, I was like, that's kind of nasty, but that is the cutest rat I've ever seen. And it was like big. It wasn't like a little cute little rat and close to a mouse. No, this was a big ass friggin' rat. Like the thing was almost the size of a Yorkie. It was huge.
Wow,
that's a scary rat.
Yeah, but it was so friendly and cute, and it was getting excited when its like owner would like cover her face with her hands, and it would run up to her face and like grab her hands off. It was adorable, and that rat should be in the kitchen.
I don't know about that, but all right, 5 spots left for the countdown today. I guess buckle up here because it seems like we're going a little bit all over the place for the remaining 5 spots. Some interesting selections that surprised me for sure. Starting with number 80, maybe not as surprising as one to come, but we're going to go back to the 80s action shows, I guess, for another selection here, and another bad character. We just talked about it with Cobra Commander and how he ranked. Well, apparently not ranking quite as high as the one Matt brought up. Number 80 would be Skeletor from Filmation. Skeletor was in the finale of our 80s cartoon villain showdown, facing off against Megatron. So we see Skeletor here, two or three spots above Cobra Commander. I guess when I went to rank them, I did not rank Cobra Commander. I ranked Skeletor at number 90, just because I thought if I'm going to pick an 80s cartoon villain or kind of that type of mold, he was kind of the one to pick for me. The other ones seem like they're just kind of copying that, or maybe don't quite have as much to give as Skeletor does, especially if you kind of go through some of the different versions of He-Man. So that's why I ranked Skeletor instead of Cobra Commander. I didn't have a lot of room for a lot of 80s action characters. So he was
just shocking me because I feel like that's your niche.
I like those shows, but if I'm looking at the characters, some of those characters are pretty paper thin, so I wouldn't have put them on here. But Skeletor was just enough to get to the 90 spot for me. Amanda, you also ranked Skeletor. Actually, a lot of love from the females here, because you had it ranked at 83 and Tara Blair had it ranked as number 10. So some love there. What do you think about Skeletor, and why did he make it on your list?
I think that he's definitely one of the most iconic characters coming out of that genre, and I think that he was super creepy and weird, but also he was laughable. Like, you could laugh at some of his attempts and just how he was and his voice. And I think that he makes really awesome memes. So yeah.
He's had more memes than some of the other 80s action characters for sure. Alan Oppenheimer does a great job with his voice in the original cartoon. Matt, you as well ranked Skeletor instead of Cobra Commander. What made you do that?
I love Skeletor. Like, I love his design. He's just fucking muscles with the skeleton head, like, for no reason. And then I love his voice, like.
I had anticipated that is. So if that's the way you want it, then that's the way you get it.
Nice try, Boneface, but have some of mine. You blasted blue bungler! Take that!
Getting rusty, Hordak? Try this!
And the reimagining in the early 2000s, like, he was a total badass, like, sorcerer, swordsman guy. Like, he's my favorite 80s villain, probably.
Absolutely. I can see a lot of people agreeing with you on that one. Dan, are we too much 80s action love here?
I mean, we're not talking top 50, top 70, 80. I think
Right.
is fine for Skeletor, So, like I said, He-Man was one thing that I missed in my childhood, so I didn't really rank him, and I think I ended up ranking Cobra instead. So I can't really argue one character is better than the next. They're both about the same. I mean, they're legitimately, you could probably, list their characteristics on a piece of paper, and they match up pretty perfectly. So it's just really a preference, really.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Sketch, you did not rank Skeletor either, so do you think...
I almost did, though. He was on
Okay.
my list at one point, and I bumped him off for another iconic villain. I think Skeletor is a great 80s cartoon villain. I feel like all of these characters are really enhanced by parodies that came after them, and like Robot Chicken, the Robot Chicken bits with Skeletor and Cobra Commander and Shredder and all of them, so great. Oh, and Megatron, obviously. And even they get Frank Welker most of the time to do Megatron, and that's freaking fantastic. I would say, yes, you should rank Skeletor above Cobra Commander. I might rank somebody else higher than that because of when I grew up, and also because this other character has so many other interpretations, usually ranging in the more badass. But yeah. I think Skeletor is a really great prototypical bad guy, and he's ridiculous and he's entertaining. And what more can you want out of a villain, really? And the reason why he is a skull with muscles is because somebody burnt his freaking face off.
And he just doesn't give a fuck.
No. And that's another great thing about him.
Nice. All right, so well, everybody will have to weigh in. What you guys think? Cobra Commander falls, and then Skeletor a few spots later, a few spots higher.
79.
Let's go somewhere completely different for number 79. We have not had a character based on a theatrical short for a while. We also haven't had a character that could go back a ways in origin. We're going back to 1943 for only the second Disney character so far in the countdown, or characters, I guess you could say, because this is our first pairing that we've had, and it is none other than Chip and Dale at number 79. Dan, not too far off here. You had them ranked at 60. They fall here at 79. What do you think of the first duo of the countdown, Chip and Dale?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I watched a little bit of the Chip and Dale Disney stuff. I had a lot of like VHS shorts and stuff, but this really came down to the Rescue Rangers. You know, as a kid of the 90s, that was a huge show for me. So when you go to other pairings, I think maybe you're a little bit stronger or lasted a bit longer, but they're fun. I think they're better with stronger supporting characters. I don't think they can hold up on their own as much. This is why I didn't rank them as high, but I am a fan of Rescue Rangers, and you do love the fact that if you go back to the old cartoon, you do realize one is dressed up as Indiana Jones and the other one is Magnum PI. So you got that going for them. So
I think people, a lot of people probably only know them through Rescue Rangers or some of their more modern. They've been in 26 different shows, movies, games, etc. I think the shorts are kind of underappreciated because I think they were excellent in the original shorts as well. I had them ranked all the way up at 19, actually, so I apparently had them much higher than anybody else. I just think they're a great duo, and I think they complement each other very well. Very similar to a couple other pairings that maybe we'll see, maybe we won't. But I have a lot of love for Chip and Dale, not just in the Rescue Rangers, but in the shorts as well. Amanda, Matt, or Sketch, any comments on Chip and Dale?
I think Chip and Dale is kind of in the part of my life where I just was kind of starting to be able to remember things. So memories of Chip and Dale are kind of vague for me, but I really remember enjoying them. And I definitely saw them in Rescue Rangers, and I think that they were super fun and super cute, and I wish that I remembered them more.
Fair enough. Matt?
I mean, she echoed my opinion perfectly. I mean, we are the exact same age.
All right. So, Sketch, any last thoughts on Chip and Dale?
Yeah, you have the two different levels with Chip and Dale. You have They're, Rescue Rangers where Chip is trying to be a leader and Dale is a bit of a goofball and he's always kind of trying to prove himself. And then in the old shorts, they were just a foil to characters like Donald Duck, and those are really funny. They really rattled those other characters' cages. So there is that great level to it. And I would say if you wanted to put them up against a similar duo of characters, Macintosh, the Goofy Gophers, probably Chip and Dale come out on top in that regard too. So
yeah, I would agree with that statement.
I'm good with Chip and Dale where they are. Maybe a little higher. I think I forgot to rank them.
Yes, you did.
Oh, my bad. But I
All
figured
right.
somebody would.
Yeah, enough to get him up here onto the number 79 slot.
78.
Going to number 78, well, let's stick with Disney, but let's go with a Disney character based on a film. We've only had a few characters based on films in this segment of the countdown, and we've only had a few characters coming from the 1990s. How about the first Disney princess, Mulan, coming in at number 78. Amanda, you had Mulan ranked the highest, I believe, at number 17. Are you a little sad that she falls here at 78?
A little sad, but I get it. I don't think she was one of the most popular Disney princesses. I think she might be a tad underrated at times. This was a time in my life where movies really meant a lot to me, like started to mean something, and I got a lot out of it. I really connected with her. I was like a weird, awkward tomboy when I was little, and trying to kind of come into your own and brush off what everybody else thinks of you, and especially if you're not kind of like in this cookie cutter situation, it's difficult. And I remember seeing the previews for Mulan and being like super moved, and because it's like this storm and she's like out in the rain crying, and she really deals with like life and death situation, and the gravity of what she goes through is really marvelous. And I think that she goes about it with such grace, really. I mean, she is kind of awkward and fumbling at times, but I think how she comes into her own is really a great story, and I think she's empowering. And I don't know if this is the right numbering, but like I said, in this kind of section, it's hard for me to say, yeah, this is a good spot for that or not. But I'm glad she even made the list, honestly.
Dan, we talked about in the beginning that sometimes if there were certain types of characters, we might have only went with the top one or the top two. Is that a situation for Mulan? And if Mulan is here at number 78, how many other Disney princesses do you expect to show up in the rest of the countdown?
It's hard to say because, I guess I don't even consider Mulan a Disney princess in a way, which is more positive for her than strength. I feel like with a lot of Disney princess characters, they tend to be very weak as characters often. Like they're war of time and place. They're often the damsel in distress. They are kind of allowing things to happen around them where they're not really the ones moving forward with the plot, like Snow White or Cinderella, maybe less Cinderella. So yeah, probably others are more popular and or more known for their movies. Where I feel like if you're looking strictly on character, you could probably argue Mulan is as good as if not better than all the Disney princesses, but probably is not getting ranked higher simply because maybe her movie isn't as well known, as well respected. So I think that's where you're seeing her fall here. Or maybe we won't have any more Disney princesses and she's the only one that got ranked. I'm going to probably guess it's the former rather than the latter. So I think that's kind of a case where maybe we'll see a few more. My guess, like I said, Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, maybe. But I guess, I think that's more of a circumstantial than rather a character being ranked where they should based upon the quality of who they are as a character.
But that music, though, in her movie, tops.
Sketch, you agree with what Dan's saying, or what are your thoughts?
I think as far as characters go, Mulan is the best Disney princess. As far as popularity, iconicness goes, she definitely falls down the list. Like, I don't even think of her as a Disney princess, really, because she's much more than that. She's a great, empowering character.
She's a friggin' war hero.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just kind of going in the way that they merchandise. You know, they group her in with.
Yeah, they do, and they do that with Merida too.
Merida really is like legit a princess. I mean, she's just like she's
warrior
royalty.
princess.
Yeah.
Merida, warrior princess. Yeah, I do expect to see one or two other princesses to pop up, maybe, just because of popularity. I mean, if people were thinking of what's popular, then I'm pretty sure one or two will pop up ahead of Mulan. But if they don't, okay, I'm good with it.
I think it's one of the most interesting kind of little sub stories, plots, or whatever you want to call it, lines going through this countdown, is to see how the Disney princesses shake down, and if people did go with the ones that were actually good characters, or if popularity played a part. So that's definitely something to watch for as we kind of go through.
If those Frozen bitches beat out Mulan, I'm gonna be pissed.
Me too.
Matt, I know you haven't seen all of the Disney films, but you know of all of them. So what do you think of Mulan in comparison to some of the other names that you've been hearing thrown about?
Everything that I've heard is that she's more interesting as a character. She's more of a protagonist and less of a victim. Like everyone says, she sounds like she's the best choice. I have not seen her movie, but I feel like that's a bigger regret than, say, not having seen Snow White.
Yeah. All right. So...
Yeah, because that bitch is just falling down in the woods.
Yeah. What did
you don't watch Snow White for Snow White?
It's all about the dwarves.
We've asked a lot of questions already so far through this portion of the countdown, and we actually are going to get one of the answers already as well that we asked earlier.
77.
Coming in at number 77, our second character from Amblin Entertainment from the same film, 77, is Jessica Rabbit. So Jessica Rabbit beats out Roger Rabbit. They both appear in this segment of the countdown. Dan, did we get that right or wrong?
I think we probably got that wrong, because it's like, name a characteristic regarding Jessica Rabbit like that defines her character that doesn't reflect the way she looks, and I don't know if you can, and that's kind of the point of the character. So I guess maybe you could argue she certainly has her place, based like as an icon or of some sort, but as a character, I would flip-flop this with Roger Rabbit.
Why don't you do right like some other man do? Get out of here.
She's married to Roger Rabbit.
Yeah. What a lucky girl. Now if you had prepared 20 years ago, you wouldn't be wandering now from door to door.
It's interesting, too, if you look at it, because actually more people voted for Roger Rabbit. He appeared on 7 people voted for Roger, and only 6 people voted for Jessica Rabbit. But if I read the rankings again, Roger Rabbit 82, 77, 63, 85, 66, 58, and then 39. Jessica Rabbit 97, 94, but then it goes to 43, 43, 30, and 25. So the people that did rank Jessica Rabbit ranked her a little bit higher. Amanda, what do you think? Agree with Dan that we got that wrong, or do you think this is how it should have played out?
Did I rank her?
You did rank Jessica Rabbit at number 94.
Yeah, I was struggling a little bit with the matchup that we saw on Facebook. It was hard for me to pull out one or the other, but I think that Roger Rabbit was definitely a more solid character. I think there was more to him, and I think that this being a male-dominated list, maybe, animated boobies wins out. I don't know.
Sketch, we talked about that a lot of times a certain TV show or a certain film might eliminate certain characters because you're only going to go with the top character from that film or from that show. Who Framed Roger Rabbit gets 2 characters in. Surprised by that?
I'm not too surprised, because clearly some people were thinking with their other head. But I think it's a real throwaway, honestly. There's much better characters than Jessica Rabbit. She's just kind of there because of iconicness and, feelings that people associate with her. But she's just not, she's paper thin. There's nothing to her.
Because she's 2D.
But she's not bad. She's just drawn that way.
So that's 3 people that are in agreement there that Jessica Rabbit maybe doesn't deserve to be this high or on this side of Roger Rabbit. Matt, are you going to make it 4 for 4, or are you going to disagree?
No, I think Roger Rabbit deserves to be above her. And again, not surprised. I think I mentioned that earlier.
All right, so that is the answer to that question. We only have one more spot left in today's section of the countdown.
76.
I'm coming in at number 76, and this is one of the 2 most surprising ones for me. This goes right up there with Slappy Squirrel. I'm very surprised that this character is on the countdown, and maybe a sign that some people might get scared here for the rest of our countdown, but we're going back to the world of Hasbro, actually, and back to a show that has already had a character. Beating out Cobra Commander, coming in at number 76, Snake Eyes. So not one of the main villain, not the main villain, not the main hero. Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe coming in at number 76. The Simplistic Reviews guys had this at number 21. The Talking in Circles guys had this at number 21. Steve Megatron Phillips had it at 23. So that's 3 people that had it in their top 25, just to mention a few of the people that rank Snake Eyes. Sketch, let's start with you. Snake Eyes beats Cobra Commander. Shocked?
I don't think that's right. Snake Eyes is a really cool character. He's like a quintessential ninja in G.I. Joe. He's a cool character. He's usually pretty likable in every interpretation. He's strong but silent type. He's not that interesting in my opinion. But I mean, different interpretations, he can be interesting. Like he can have an interesting backstory. The whole thing with him is Storm Shadow. It makes for a good story, but as an individual character, he's a ninja. There's not much else to him.
Also, one of the, unless you're counting Tinkerbell, and in some obviously in some of the incarnations, Tinkerbell does not speak, but also one of the first non-speaking characters to appear on the countdown. I don't know if that gets him bonus points from people when they're ranking him or not. Amanda, do you know enough about G.I. Joe to know Snake Eyes?
I think Snake Eyes was dope in the live-action movies, but I don't remember him in the cartoon.
Fair enough. Matt or Dan, any thoughts on Snake Eyes showing up on the countdown at all? Deserving, or what are we thinking here?
I think he's my favorite G.I. Joe. That's all I could say.
Yeah,
really.
I would probably. Yeah, as growing up as a kid, he was always my favorite G.I. Joe, mostly because he was a ninja. So it's like, it was just the cool dude with a nose, and he had a dog, right? Like, or am I wrong? I had to remember. It's been a while since I watched G.I. Joe.
Spirit had a dog. I don't remember if Snake Eyes did.
Yeah, so if like Sketch was saying, if you were just looking at him as a character, there's really much there. I mean, not really. He more so look in the fact that he could kick butt, really. So, if anything, maybe switch him and Donatello or something like that. So
yeah.
Interesting too. It kind of begs the question: if we've seen Cobra Commander and Snake Eyes, that's 2 characters from G.I. Joe.
There
Snake
better
Eyes
not be more.
Snake Eyes' arch enemy was Storm Shadow. We also had Destro. We had Duke. Are we going to see a whole bunch of G.I. Joes coming down the pipe, or just Cobra Commander and Snake Eyes? And if those are the only 2, that's an interesting selection. We'll have to wait and see on that. Looking back here on the first group of 25, just a couple questions for you guys. Dan, looking at the companies represented, we've been all over the place. Obviously, we had a handful of Hanna-Barbera. We had 3 Disney, 2 Amblin, 2 Hasbro, we had Leica, we had WB with 1, Filmation with a couple, Pixar with a couple, 1 Muppet, and a handful of anime characters. What do you think of the diversity of this? And more specifically, if we're looking at some of the action, kind of from the right time period for the people involved in this list, with characters from He-Man, characters from G.I. Joe, Turtles, etc. represented, and only 3 Disney characters, is that more of a sign of that the Disney characters are being saved for later, or are you anticipating an 80s action bias running through this whole countdown?
I feel like it's a sign for Disney characters come later, because when you have so many choices, like if you get those that I think you could, the obvious choices are probably going to be, coming later where, where we get a lot of diversity here. Because like when you're creating a list, it gets really challenging the latter half. So you get more variety. You're kind of just trying to think of ones where I'm sure when we get to the top 25, top 50, you're going to see a lot more of the more known studios. Maybe we'll get less anime, where we'll get most of the Pixar and Disney and Looney Tunes coming up. I'm actually kind of surprised we haven't seen more Looney Tunes characters yet, considering just how many of those are. But I'm happy.
And I guess that could go into the same type of thing if you treat that as a franchise and you only vote for one or two of them. How many will we see? So that's an interesting line to kind of follow through as well. Going into kind of the breakdown as far as Matt, you said you didn't rank any anime characters. How surprised are you that we've already seen 4 or 5 anime characters in this section of the countdown?
I think I'm about as surprised as how few Disney characters we've seen. I feel like the anime characters are going to be definitely in the last half, or the first half, however you look at it. The lower ranked, and the Disney characters are going to be higher ranked. I mean, there is more diversity than I expected. I never even considered Akira, and I'm sure there's going to be a couple of more surprises just like that. We haven't seen Goku yet, who I'm sure made the list. Goku, like everyone loves Goku.
I saw the best T-shirt online today of Goku, and it was like the scene from Friday when they were like, "Damn!" But it was, I think it was Goku and Gohan.
You are a reference for all YouTube / memes and pictures out there. You're a great source for that.
I'm on it.
All right, Amanda, question for you here. We talked about in the beginning that maybe the female-male split would be 80-20 or 70-30 or something like that. You guys were talking about 70 percentages or something like that. So far, we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 female characters in this grouping of 24. Surprised or not?
I want to say no. I think there should be enough, iconic characters with everything in Disney and everything that we've just seen in like 80s stuff and whatnot. I think that we should have enough to be able to put a good smattering of female characters in there. And we do have a couple, females on this panel here submitting lists. So I think that there can be love from all sides. And I think that.
Did we underestimate the amount of Disney females when we were putting that percentage out, the 70 or 80% males?
Perhaps. I mean, there's like a fuck ton of Disney princesses.
Fair enough. All right, a question for you, Sketch. We also talked about the good versus evil and how a majority of the characters would probably be good, but we did see a smattering of bad characters here, I guess. You got Skeletor, Cobra Commander, Brock, Dick Dastardly.
We'll call him Brock, like Brock Lesnar.
Brock? I didn't watch the show, my bad. But Sketch, is only 4 bad characters showing up? Is that surprising, or do you think that's going to be a kind of the similar thing for each section of 25? Only 3 or 4 bad characters.
Yeah, I think the ratio is probably going to maintain itself that way. I think the closer you get to the top, it will taper off a lot more. I don't think there's going to be any in the top 10, maybe not even in the top 20. But I think for the next batches, you're still going to see 3 to 4 pop up.
All right. We'll have to wait and see for that. I want to give you guys each one more chance. Just give your final reaction so far on this section of the countdown. What you liked, what you didn't like, surprises, disappointments. Is there one character that you definitely feel is undeserving, or what do you think? Let's start with you, Amanda. What are your general thoughts on numbers 100 through 76?
Definitely a few curveballs in there. I would have thought that Skeletor would have been higher up just based on the people that are ranking here. Same thing with She-Ra. I think that having a lot of Hanna-Barbera characters definitely made sense, though, especially in this grouping. So a couple curveballs, but definitely some stuff that I would expect.
Sketch, how about you? What are your overall thoughts on numbers 100 through 76?
There've been some interesting picks here that I really didn't consider. Yeah, I figured there would be a lot more variety on this end of the list, and that's why I was kind of excited to be talking about this part of the list, because I figured it would be less of the obvious choices and more of the, oh, hey, how about that? And yeah, I think it's been pretty good so far. I already mentioned that I don't think Tetsuo or Jessica Rabbit should be on this list. I don't think Snake Eyes should be on this list, at least not Snake Eyes and Cobra Commander. And if there's another G.I. Joe, I mean, for goodness sake, people. Because I'm sure there's going to be more 80s characters. Like, we don't have Megatron or Optimus Prime on here yet. You know there will be. And Goku's a given, even though adult Goku is an annoying, boring character. It's all about Kid Goku. Kid Goku was the best.
Yeah, I like the variety we've seen so far. We've seen a ton of different companies, studios. We've seen a lot of different decades represented so far, source material. I am a little bit surprised. I guess the two that stand out the biggest for me would be Snake Eyes and Slappy Squirrel. I wasn't expecting those two.
Slappy is real unexpected.
Yeah, and a few characters that I don't know enough about, so I still need to be exposed to a couple of them. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this segment and kind of the foot we're getting started off on. Matt, what about your overall thoughts so far? 100 through 76, we get some. What kind of grade do we get on this?
Well, I mean, Slappy Squirrel showing up, and I'm like, is Chicken Boo gonna show up? Chicken Boo was more entertaining than Slappy Squirrel, or even the Good Feathers. Of all of your Animaniacs characters, you chose that one? The Animaniacs themselves are gonna have to show up, absolutely. If just the two or three people that put her on their list, they're gonna put them on their list, right? I have no idea.
Maybe she's just their favorite Animaniac. You don't know.
Man, I don't know. And that's this list. I don't know. I feel like 8 of my top 10 are not gonna be on this list, and yet puppets are, and somehow that bothers me probably more than it should. Because puppets, they're puppets. Don't get me wrong, I love puppets. I watched No You Shut Up. I watched. I love puppet stuff. They're not animated. So I don't know, man. This thing is gonna go off the rails. I feel like, other than Disney princesses and a couple of other guys here or there, I'm gonna have no idea what's coming up on the next 75 of these guys.
Dan, I ask you the same question. What kind of grade do you give us so far?
Well, I think there are probably, arguably 2 to 3 characters that maybe shouldn't be on here, like Jessica Rabbit and Snake Eyes, and maybe you could argue that Cobra Commander as well. So a B, I guess. I'm happy to see characters like Nausicaa and Coraline. I do wish they were higher, but I'm happy that they're on the list. I'm happy that we did see as many female characters as we did. I hope that continues as we go forward. And this is probably, like Sketch mentioned, maybe the most fun, because this is where it's you legitimately have no idea. Because if you ask me to name 300 characters, I don't think I would in that come up with Slappy Squirrel, just because of the amount of characters that come up with. So that was kind of a fun to see. So that's interesting, and I'm also seeing a character like Cobra Commander go this low, though, makes me wonder, maybe we won't get as many of those 80s action characters as we think we will. Obviously 2 big ones like Optimus Prime and Megatron are probably going to be high up there, but I don't think we'll get another G.I. Joe character. Maybe Sergeant Slaughter. You never know. He could sneak up there somehow. But I think it's good, but it's hard when it comes to this end of the countdown. I think moving forward, we'll see. I'm interested.
Solid B.
Yeah. Solid B. All right. That's a passing grade. So for those of you who are wondering about the names and characters that didn't quite make the countdown, we save that until the wrap-up show once we're done with everything, just to keep the suspense going. So we will do honorable mentions and those that just missed at the end of the entire countdown. But that's it for this segment of the Top 100. Thank you very much for listening. Make sure you go to the website geekcastradio.com and commenting on what your thoughts are so far. We definitely will talk about feedback at some point along this adventure. Sketch, before we go, how can people get into contact with you on Twitter, or how can people listen to more of your thoughts on different things?
Okay, my Twitter is @sketch1984. I also have a Tumblr, sketch1984.tumblr.com. My podcast is Tsunami Faithful Podcast. which is on podcast.toonamifaithful.com and also soundcloud.com/toonamifaithfulpodcast, or look it up on iTunes. And my final thought is, if Shredder and or Krang is not on this list, you have all failed me.
And if anybody out there likes listening to Amanda, Matt, Dan, or I for some reason, obviously check out Cinema Geeks, where we give you guys a weekly movie discussion on a variety of different things, including what we talked about today, the Miyazaki Spotlight. Also, be sure to check out some of the other contributors, In Session Film, Simplistic Reviews, Talking in Circles, as well as the other Geekcast Radio Network content. If you want to get in touch with each one of us individually, you can also do that via Twitter. Dan, what is your Twitter handle?
I'm at MovieRevolt.
Matt?
I'm at FridleyCent.
Amanda?
At HardCandiMandi, eyes, no eyes.
And I am at OptimusSolo. Tune in next time for the next segment of the top 100 animated characters of all time.